Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you to the board meeting on February 19th, 2019. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome you all and to say that if you wish to speak during the hearing of citizens, you may pick up a card in the back of the room, fill it out legibly, and present it to Kathy Tompkins so that we can call on you when you're ready to speak and when we're ready to do that part of the board meeting. At this time, I'd like you to stand and join me in pledging allegiance to the flag under the direction of Sarasota Military Academy and Lieutenant Ben Wise.
Colors, gun, carry, colors. Mark time, march. Ride, pace. Forward, march. Mark time, march. Left, face. Colors, halt. Present arms.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order, arms. Post. March. Mark time, march. Ride, pace. Forward, march.
Today, we are very happy to have with us Bernard Hill, who is a senior at Suncoast Polytechnic High School. Bernard just received a nice commemorative certification from me, thanking him for being a part of our board meeting today. I know that you are doing some very exciting things at Suncoast Polytech. Could you tell us a little bit about your major and some of the things and projects that you're involved with?
Yes, ma'am. So I'm actually a 4-year member of our Animation, Gaming, and Simulation program. The acronym is AGS. And like I said, I've been in it all 4 years. So I started in freshman year and I've continued into my senior year. And right now, in order to facilitate our learning for game design and development, I am working with a group of students in my classroom to make a game all our own using assets like art and animations that were made all on our own as well.
I think the school is just such an exciting school. What about college? Any thoughts on that?
Well, actually, because of what I learned in the AGS program, I'm looking into degree programs for graphic design and game design. So I'm looking into attending either SCF for graphic design or UCF or Full Sail in Orlando for game design.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Next, we have some special presentations, and I'd like to call James Slayton, our District Athletic Director, to the podium for a Riverview High School Student Athlete recognition. James.
Thank you. We've come together today. We're going to honor a state champion swimmer from Riverview High School. Her name is Emma Wyant. She won the state championship in both the 200 IM and the 500 free. I would like to thank Dr. Bowden and the school board for recognizing our great athletic competition and accomplishments that we've had over the course of this year. This year has been another banner year. We've had 5 individual state champions in the district, 2 team state champions, 5 state runner-up teams, 2 state athletes of the year, and 2 state coaches of the year. So it's been an amazing year for athletics, and Emma, a great chance for us to recognize her accomplishments as well. Athletics, we talk about, is a great chance for us to show some of these amazing young people, but more importantly, for them to show all the things that they can do. You know, we say athletics is not life, but it is a way that we teach life principles, and we believe that here in Sarasota County. I want to thank Riverview Principal Aaron Del Castillo, Assistant Principal over Athletics Glenn Wachter, and Athletic Director Rod Dragish for their support and guidance of Riverview High Athletics. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Dragish.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. I would like to thank the school board for having us. I would like to thank Dr. Bowden for having us, for recognizing us today, and I'd like to thank our principal, Ms. Del Castillo, for doing what she does. Our swim team has won the state meet 11 out of 12 years, and we are very fortunate to keep producing quality student athletes, as well as keeping quality coaches and mentors, like Coach Brent Arkey, like Coach Terry Leap, and like Coach Marcia O'Gorman. These coaches, just like our student athletes, put in countless hours in the pool from early mornings to late nights, expecting nothing but greatness from our student athletes, from the decks, from the pool decks to the classrooms. On behalf of Riverview's administration and athletic department, we would like to thank Coach Brent Arkey and Emma Wyatt for representing Riverview High School so well. Thank you. Coach Brent?
Thank you for having us. I get the opportunity to talk about a great young lady here. Just so you guys know, these athletes are up at 4 o'clock in the morning. They're in the water at 5. They go to school all day, come back, get back in the pool at 3 o'clock. This young lady has a 4.0 GPA. There's never an excuse for not being at swim practice. She's the hardest worker in the pool. I'm on record saying I now have a young daughter that if she becomes even remotely like Emma Wyant, I would be extremely proud. Emma is not only a great state swimmer, she is also an international level swimmer. Last summer, she had the opportunity to represent the United States of America in Fiji. You know, most of these sports, you're taking the summer off. She is training the entire summer, and anytime you get the opportunity to wear the red, white, and blue, it's pretty special. This summer, she will have the opportunity to train for U.S. Nationals out in Palo Alto at Stanford University, and with the opportunity to make the World Junior team. Emma has some of the best opportunities because of her hard work. She's currently looking at Stanford University, University of Florida, University of Virginia, and University of Georgia. All of them have won a NCAA championship in the last 10 years, and obviously some great academics on that list. So this young lady deserves everything that she gets. I'm so honored to be able to talk about her, and I'm really looking forward to what she can do and represent us as a school, as a county, and represent herself and her family as she moves on to the next level. This is a very special young lady. Emma, congrats.
School board, if y'all want to come down, we'll get a picture.
One more.
Go. Wait for the other crow.
We have a coach that is not up there. Get up there.
No, we're good. Go ahead. I'm the silent, supportive kind of coach.
Okay, folks, ready? 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Congratulations. Gators. No recruiting now, no recruiting.
Thank you.
Okay, moving right along. Next up is the Superintendent's Report. Dr. Bowden. We have another presentation. Sorry about that. Would Chris Renoff, Executive Director of Elementary Schools, come to the podium? I think his guest is here now from the Rotary Club of Sarasota. Chris?
Hey, thank you so much, and sorry for the flip-flop, but again, congratulations to Coach and Riverview, and Emma, congratulations. Let's keep the celebration going. So, Madam Chair, members of the board, Superintendent Bowden, Mr. Hardy, and obviously Mr. Hill. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you today to recognize and celebrate a few very special guests, and also to highlight the incredible One Book, and if you haven't heard of it, you will know all about it tonight, the One Book initiative that all of our first and fourth grade students in all of our elementary schools across the county participated in this year. With us today are two wonderful friends, I'm going to say committed partners, and after reviewing their long list of honors, titles, accomplishments, and things that they're so involved in, I wasn't sure if we should stand, bow, salute, or simply say a very warm and special thank you to Sarah Lodge. Sarah Lodge is a proud parent of students at Philippi Shores Elementary. She's the eager supporter of literacy opportunities and development for all students. She's a positive impetus, and I selected that personally because she's the brains behind the One Book initiative. She really thought this through and wanted to make sure that it had the best and the greatest impact for all of our students, and so really about innovative thinking. And she's the current president of the Rotary Club of Sarasota. Please, let's give a round of applause to Sarah Lodge. With Sarah, there's another gentleman, and I think most everybody knows this gentleman, but we may not know all of the fun facts that I learned about Jim. Mr. Jim Henry. Jim is the former president of the Rotary Club of Sarasota. He is the Rotarian of the Decade, the recipient of the Service Above Self Award, the Regional Rotary International Membership Coordinator, the Rotary International North American Regional Membership Development and Retention Committee Coordinator, and I added this last one, Community Connector and Champion for All Children, Mr. Jim Henry. Jim and Sarah, under your stellar and steadfast leadership, the Rotary Club of Sarasota, and I say and friends because I know they work closely with a lot of local Rotaries and with the One Book initiative, the Moat Scientific Foundation. They continue to lead the way and inspire us all by serving as a catalyst for the school-based food pantries, mobilization of the dental sealant program, the establishment of the dictionary project for our third grade students that has been in existence for years, public promotion and very positive promotion of the Suncoast campaign for grade level reading, the development and dissemination of kindergarten readiness bags for all of our future stars entering kindergarten, and finally, the implementation of the One Book Common Literacy Learning Experience for all our first and fourth grade students. I'd be remiss if I did not say the Rotary's work, the message, and unwavering commitment is so incredibly inspiring and should be commended, celebrated, because it reminds us all about the potential that we all possess when we come and work together to positively impact our communities, our children, and ultimately our future. So at this time, I'd like to invite up Holly Chesnoff, one of our outstanding ELA instructional specialists and teacher extraordinaire, to further highlight the true impact of the One Book Initiative. Holly.
Great. Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. Before we begin, I think we have some slide pictures. Not sure who, but if we can get those, that'd be great. I'm sure we can all agree on two things that we can never have enough of, and those are kindness and appreciation. One of the strongest ways these qualities can be nurtured is through stories, specifically the reading and discussion of these shared stories. A professor of language and literacy education at Georgia State University explains that stories convey values, beliefs, attitudes, and social norms, which in turn shape our children's perception of reality. Stories are one of the most fundamental ways in which we communicate, and stories help children develop empathy and cultivate imaginative and divergent thinking. So, strong stories shared with children can help us and all of our students in Sarasota County cultivate kindness and appreciation. These prevalent themes are present in the books the Rotary Club of Sarasota so generously provided this year for all of our first grade students and fourth grade students in Sarasota County. All first graders received a copy of The Magic Fish, and all fourth graders received a copy of R.J. Palacio's acclaimed Wonder. This wonderful partnership with the Rotary Club of Sarasota has set the stage for deep, sustained learning experiences for our students. This year, as a component of the Closing the Literacy Gap grant funded by the Barancik Foundation, I had the opportunity to engage with fourth grade teachers around the work of clear, rigorous, and intentional instruction and planning for meaningful interactions with text. We grappled with how to combine our need for standards-based instruction with interesting, relevant reading experiences. For our fourth grade teachers, the addition of R.J. Palacio's Wonder in each classroom really truly benefited and complemented their efforts, allowing them the opportunity to have important conversations around standards such as point of view, character change, and structure, all anchored in around the rich, relevant story that teaches the importance of inclusivity, diversity, and looking beyond one's external appearance. Reading is a social community activity that pushes us all to keep asking questions, to uncover meaning that we may otherwise not have gained. We see the perspectives of others and engage in respectful conversations. We are so grateful to our Rotary partners for this beautiful gift. And now I'm going to hand it over to Kelly Ellington, Director of Elementary Curriculum. I didn't have time to think of a lot more titles with her, to share a little bit about the activities carried out at our schools.
Thank you, Holly. Good afternoon, everyone. So nice to be here. I am very pleased to now share with you some of the special ways that our teachers and students embrace this shared reading experience with the books Wonder and The Magic Fish. Our curriculum specialists here at the district level provided extensive resources for teachers to begin with, and these included suggested pre-reading activities, journal prompts for discussion, for writing in response to reading, discussion questions, community project ideas, and also home connections or activities that parents could do with the students, their children at home to extend the learning possibilities around these books. Students read these stories in class. They are reading them still. They're engaging in rich conversations with peers. They are working across classrooms and even across schools. One example we have of this is from Tuttle Elementary and Venice Elementary. They were working together with their fourth graders around the book Wonder, and they've become pen pals. And so you see a couple of pictures here and a sample letter. We are going to share this PowerPoint with the Rotary afterwards so that you have these great pictures as well. We still get pictures coming in from our schools. Access to these books that promote kindness and appreciation help nurture these qualities in our students, and then they'll become kind and appreciative young adults. At Southside Elementary, our fourth graders created self-portraits with varied messages of kindness, and so you can see the display that was in the hall there. Fourth graders at M.E. Booker and Ashton Elementary participated in a Battle of the Books event via Skype. And then we had a story come in from a parent. One of our schools let us know that a parent stopped a staff member in the office one day to ask about the book Magic Fish. The parent was very eager to tell about her daughter's excitement the day she came home with her gift. This parent said her first grade daughter arrived home that day. Her shy reader could not wait to share her new book. They sat and they read. And this parent said she was so grateful to have had this moment with her daughter, all the while fostering a love of reading. Shared reading experiences offer so many benefits to our students, and when we engage our students in a reading community, we help to build lifelong readers. So we're very grateful to our partnership with the Rotary Club of Sarasota. We're also very excited because thanks to Jim's and Sarah's efforts, I believe that not only is this initiative going to continue, but it may be expanding. More to come, I think, on that. And now we'd like to have Jim and Sarah come up so we can give them a token of our appreciation. It's actually a special copy of the book Wonder that's been signed by all the principals in appreciation for your gift. So if you guys will come up, we'd like to present that to you.
Oh, come on.
Yep. Yeah, we have, I don't know which one is Jim's and which one is Sarah's. They can switch when they.
Thank you.
Sure. We have a certificate. Yeah,
that's great.
Would you like to say one thing, or should we say?
Any comments?
Yep, comment.
You know, I think this started off as just a brainstorming session of how we can engage these kids, and I love that the Venice and Tuttle were doing the pen pals because that was one of the original ideas. But to see the kids' faces when we handed them the books, that was just priceless for us. So all the work was well worth it. So. Thank you.
Eric Robinson, Mr. Robinson.
Yeah, I just want to say that you guys picked a wonderful book. I'm in the middle of my third time reading it. I have 3 kids. But it's a book with a message, and it's a great message that it does. There's also a movie out last year. I won't let my kids watch it until my final one reads the book. But it's a great book with a great message, and it tells the story from multiple points of views, and so you kind of get where other people are coming from. So it stops, and then it shows the same interaction of people, but from, I guess, the bully's point of view, and then it shows it from the kid who's being picked on and from his friends. And so it's a very, I've never read a book that showed things from so many different angles. So it's a really great message, and I think it teaches the kids something while they're reading. So it sneaks up, they're learning to read, but it sneaks up behind them that they're learning a good message. So yeah. I like the fact that you picked this book.
Well, I'm glad. You should read The Magic Fish, too. That has a lot of really good lessons behind it. That's got some good stuff in it, too. Yep.
But I think it's important to note that the teachers are the ones that actually picked the book. All we did was say that, we now have the money and we can get you the money to buy those books. But the teachers are the ones that picked the books. We didn't do that. That's the teacher's job. And while I've got it, the microphone, many of us Rotarians have looked at this thing, and that's why we do a lot of school supports and things like that, particularly in the Title I schools. Sarasota County, as we know, in the state reading test is tied for 2nd place. We Rotarians think that if we all game together, that we could actually have a joint committee and help the teachers, help the students, and ultimately gain 1st place in Sarasota and the state of Florida. And we'd like to see that happen. Sorry, I had to say that.
Oh, that's perfect.
Mrs. Brown.
Well, Jim, I'll second that. I'm sorry, Mr. Henson.
That's okay.
I'll second that because, I think that's our goal, too. We want to be first in the state in everything, and especially reading. And I know from working with, the kids that I work with that if we can get them to love reading, and that will help later on when they're going to have to read to learn. And if we can bring them books that they're going to enjoy, to open that up for them, that's the best way we can get in to help them learn. And I appreciate you joining us in that effort. And please take our thanks back to your entire club.
Oh, there's no question about that. But I want to bring out the fact that a lot of other organizations are participating in reading events and things like that too. What we lack, though, is the concept that we're all going to pull together and become #1. And that's the thing I would like to see us start saying, that we would like to do this in 3 to 5 years, have it as a goal to be #1. So.
I'd like it sooner than 3 to 5, but I think you're right. The Rotary is such a wonderful community partner. Thank you again, and please thank all the Rotarians for all their help, because it does take a village.
Yeah, we
thank
appreciate
you.
that PowerPoint.
Mrs. Zucker.
Okay.
Jim, I have to tell you that about 7 years ago, that's exactly what I put on one of my campaign brochures, #1. So that's where we've been heading as a board, and it's been out there, and we are striving. We're #2, but we will be #1, especially with this superintendent.
But we got to start that as a community.
Yes,
as a community.
it has to be.
Note. That's what we Rotarians want to do.
I remember what Janice Mee used to say, and I thought she was a little cuckoo, but she would say, it takes a village to raise a child, and now I totally understand what she meant. It does take a village.
It does.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I need the exercise.
I don't think so. You go ahead. Go.
Oh, whose pen is this? Somebody's trying to trip us.
If y'all could just squeeze a little bit more, that would be great.
Bernard. Hey, Bernard. Come on, Tracy.
Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Tracy.
One more.
Oh, stick around. Future later.
Thank you, guys.
Down when I did that interview.
5 minutes.
Okay, and that does finish up our special presentations. Next is our Superintendent's Report, Dr. Bowden.
Yes, ma'am. I just want to share some information. I had an opportunity to travel to Tallahassee last Monday and Tuesday in support of our legislative agenda. In addition to having the opportunity to meet with our legislative delegation, as well as some key committee chairs, had an opportunity to spend some time with the commissioner. And during that time with the commissioner, we discussed a number of issues, first of which was teacher certification, making sure that we were good partners in that process and seeing where the district might be of help in kind of speeding that process along. And I want you to know that that is really top of mind. While we were waiting to get in to see the commissioner, the chief of staff came by, and that was the first question that was asked, is how are we doing on teacher certification? So I know that it's a priority. Was real excited about the appointment of Jacob Oliva, who is a former superintendent, to the chancellor position for K-12 education. I know he is a fierce advocate for us, and so we have a great working relationship with him. Also, in our conversation with the chancellor, with the commissioner, we had the opportunity to talk about the governor's proposal for Best and Brightest. And I want you to know that the commissioner was very receptive to hearing some input from the field and took away some really key concerns that he promised to work with the legislature and the governor in addressing as that proposal goes from a proposal to legislation. And so we're all on the same page. The proposal coming out of the governor's office is to expand Best and Brightest to include all of our teachers rated highly effective. It does drop the requirement, which I think we all welcome, that they have an SAT score on file that puts them in the top 80%, but it is based on them being at a school which has increased their score year over year by 1%. In my meeting with the commissioner, I shared some concerns, and I used what I call the extreme example of Pineview. To ask Pineview to improve year over year to be eligible for that bonus program, I thought there needed to be some sort of threshold, and we threw some ideas around. The one that I think resonated the most is to look at the state designation of schools of excellence. And so I'm hopeful that the commissioner will advocate an expansion of the definition, not just highly effective teachers at schools that have improved by 1%, but those that are at schools of excellence. You'll note that more than half of the schools here in Sarasota have been designated as schools of excellence, and that's a criteria that's been in place, and it allows I think the department to say, we want our schools to work towards a standard, and that standard is our schools of excellence. The other concern that I expressed is one that you hear most frequently, which is using a bonus structure the best way to compensate teachers, and specifically the idea that if you're going to put $9,000 into a bonus program, and I want you to know the commissioner very quickly volunteered that we've got to make that part of the FRS calculation. And so that was something that was already on his radar screen, which is that if you're going to have a $9,000 bonus, it ought to count when we're looking at your high five. It ought to count when we're calculating retirement. So it was good to hear that. And the last thing that we talked about is, particularly here in Sarasota, which we seem to be kind of ground zero in this litigation, this fight over, well, what does the word teacher mean? And so we talked about the definition of a teacher and talked about that we have, college-educated, state-certified personnel at our school sites in a variety of positions outside of what you would say is a traditional classroom teacher. I have a class role. I have students I'm responsible for, but our guidance counselors, our behavior specialists, those ESE interventionists. And so I want you to know that it wasn't a handshake and a pat on the head. It was a great brainstorming session with the commissioner. I felt like he was listening, and I'm hopeful that as that proposal makes its way into language, that some of our conversation bears some fruit. But just wanted to report on my travel to Tallahassee. Also want to let the board know that I will be in Orlando this week for the School Safety Summit. We are 1 year. 1 year out from Parkland. I think we've learned a lot. This will be our second school safety summit in which we will come together as school leaders, as experts in the field, and look at not just physical security, guardians, sworn law enforcement, but also that key component of mental health. Jane, I steal your phrase on a regular basis that not only do we have to harden the exterior of our schools, we have to soften the interior, and to make sure that's always a part of our conversation, which is, it's one thing to have an armed guard at every school in that instance that we all hope never happens, but it's another thing to get on the preventative side and serve the needs of these students. And so I'm excited about the work that's happening in that area, and I'll have another report at our next board meeting about what's learned at the summit. That concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you. Any comments? Mrs. Brown?
I know that you talked to him about, kind of expanding who is entitled to it. And I know there's going to, if this goes forward, there'll be some happy campers, and there'll be some that'll be very disappointed, because I would imagine there were some that received will receive a $6,000 supplement or bonus this year for being highly effective in the SAT that might not qualify for it next year, or even that received a $1,200 bonus, or was it $1,200 or $900 for having highly effective, but I don't know how many of them might drop off because they won't be the schools of excellence, or this, that 1% increase. So that just gives us that issue that our union has complained about too, this merit pay, the haves and the haves not, and how that hurts. But another problem that I have with it, and I hope you share this with them, and I will too, is that when you give it to them as this bonus, it's a bonus, and it doesn't really help a teacher much when they're out there applying for a loan or applying for, a rental agreement. They say, we only take your base salary. We're not going to take that bonus if it's not guaranteed or anything. So that hurts. And the other issue that if we're looking for recruiting teachers, we need to increase the salary for all the teachers to bring that up, the starting salary, so that we can get the teachers in the first place. And also, it's more than our teachers that are doing a great job. You mentioned the counselors and all of that, but I mean, we've got the lunchroom people, we got the bus people, we've got the janitors. Where's the money for these guys? And I'm sure not advocating a $9,000 bonus, but give us something so that we can give these guys an increase. So many of them are just making $10 an hour, under $15 an hour. Let's raise those salaries too. And we can't do that if they take all of the money and put it into this wonderful, best and brightest program. And, did they say anything about that, or was that, I know you had a lot to talk about.
Well, it was kind of interesting, the back and forth. I would put a number of topics out. I'd say I'd like to discuss required local effort, and the commissioner would say, I think it's best that we use our time on something productive, and we would move on to the next topic and kind of say that's on limits or that's off limits. And so that is something I put out there. I can tell you that there is a huge focus on average teacher pay and getting the state of Florida to the national average. I can tell you that there is not a lot of confidence in the collective bargaining process, that really where they're at is they would like to compensate teachers directly. And so that's an outcry you hear in a variety of circles, is that it's really the state doing a direct transaction with the teachers. And so certainly I have concerns about our ability to compensate our classified staff, our non-classroom instructional, because really there is a laser focus on getting that average teacher salary to the national level. Now there's an opportunity there also, in that where districts do play a crucial role is that there are 67 districts and there are 67 different methods for classifying teachers as effective or highly effective. And so I think it's incumbent on us, particularly as we work with the union to negotiate a new contract, is that's something that's under our control. And so as we go into bargaining, certainly my highest priority would be addressing that percentage of highly effective teachers. I saw something on the Herald Tribune's website yesterday in regards to St. Johns County, and there's some pushback there. They're the highest performing district in the state, and they're about 53% of their teachers are ranked highly effective. We're pushing 70% here in Sarasota, but that kind of puts us, we're above middle, but we're certainly not in the upper quartile. And so our job in this process seems to be is the ranking of teachers and the assignment of this label of effective and highly effective. But the monetary transaction seems to be great momentum in that being a direct transaction between the state and the teacher.
If I may follow up, I mean, I can understand why it's advantageous to qualify every teacher as highly effective. But then if we label these highly effective, I mean, where's the incentive for the teachers to improve or to perform better? And that just, I mean, I think sort of defeats the purpose. I mean, because we want to see our teachers improving every year, the way they're working with our kids. And to give them highly effective so that they can qualify for this raise, which is a good thing. Not a raise, it's not a raise, it's a bonus. I think is a disincentive for them to try harder.
And so that's certainly the balance that we must strike. But, you know, when I look at the way the system is set up, is the state has set money aside for highly effective teachers. I will tell you that the definition of highly effective varies greatly. You know, you see districts where 97, 98% of their teachers are ranked highly effective. I would say that's probably a flawed system, but certainly at you know 70%, we are a high-performing district. I certainly think that there are things that we can do contractually to increase that percentage. You know, if I were to set kind of an arbitrary goal in my mind, certainly you know mid 80%, but that certainly has still a large number of teachers that would be rated effective, and you know teachers that would fall below that rating. But at the end of the day, that's where the state has chosen to invest. And I don't want the district to be holding our teachers back and put us in a less competitive position, because I do think that savvy education majors coming out of the University of Florida are going to know what the likelihood of them being classified as highly effective. When you talk about a first-year teacher, we start a teacher at $44,300. A $9,000 bonus represents 20% of their compensation. And if they know that one district has 80% of their teachers rated highly effective and another district has 50%, that's got to be a strong indicator. I think we have to be true to the system. I've taken a very hardline position as superintendent not to adjust any instructor's score, but I am open to changing the calculation. I'm open to doing things systemically to make sure that we are putting our teachers at least on an even keel with their peers, if not a leg up, because I think our teachers, as state data shows, outperforms their peers on a regular basis. And I don't want to deny them access to a state bonus. We work with our teachers with the goal of them receiving this incentive from the state. The fact of the matter is, it doesn't cost the district a dime. So why wouldn't? Certainly, it's a far cry from putting it on their base salary, which would be ideal. But you know, sometimes you don't make the rules; you just have to use them to your advantage.
Thank you, Mrs. Ziegler.
Thank you. No, I just wanted to touch base. I know you mentioned you met with some committee chairs and local delegation and so beyond, and including still school safety. Can you talk about who you met with and what additional discussions were about what specifically we'd put forward for Sarasota?
Sure. So when you talk things that are uniquely Sarasota, our Summer Learning Academy bill is moving. Matter of fact, it'll receive a hearing tomorrow in the House. We've been working with our representatives up in Tallahassee, Ron LaFace and Megan, in regards to making sure we're getting information, talking points up there for them. And also our bill, which will benefit the entire state on substitute teachers and making sure that our teachers can stay with us after retirement if they choose to sub, and getting great feedback on both of those bills, which have local sponsors and very positive indications.
I think one of the biggest concerns that we have is the new safety and security bill and the fact that we're going to be arming teachers or suggesting the arming of teachers, and that gives me great pause, and I think it gives others great pause. And secondarily, you know, we need money and we need flexibility. We need money in our base student allocation, which we had 47 cents last year because we put so many of our limited funds into categoricals. But this year, with safety and security, we need flexibility, because what is working in Sarasota County, which is our own police force, is not the same situation in Manatee or Citrus County or Levy County. So I think rather than making absolutes, that we're hopeful that there will be some flexibility along those lines as well. But thank you for going, and I think it's a great effort that we're all having. I think Bridget has done some great work in Tallahassee, and we're all looking forward to this legislative session one way or the other. I mean, just the anticipation of it is an important thing. But I think that, you know, going forward, we have to really be mindful of what's happening there, because session starts just a matter of days. Mrs. Zucker.
They're going right now.
Yes. I'd like to report that I was up in Tallahassee last week, and part of my report was with the Juvenile Justice Council. And I also met with the head of the county government and the municipalities, and both of those entities have agreed to support us in our effort for our two top priorities for Sarasota County. So that's a big thing, getting the counties and the municipalities to help you push your legislation through. So I will be reporting on that as it continues down the line and as we go through session.
Any other questions or any other comments? Thank you. In that case, we'll move on to the hearing of citizens. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak. When the timer flashes yellow on the front of Mrs. Tompkins' desk, you have 1 minute remaining. Please make sure that you try to stop exactly at the 3-minute warning. Please make sure that you're respectful of divergent viewpoints and civility, and make sure that you do not show a great deal of agreement or disagreement, and make no clapping or sounds from the gallery. So with that, I would like to call our first speaker, Julie Brady.
Good afternoon, school board members. I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you. It's not an easy thing to do. I'm here specifically to oppose the new contract that's been put together. I just want to remind you, all the residents of this county expect you to be good stewards of the resources we give you with our taxpayer money. And part of that is negotiating contracts with the superintendent. I believe that every board member should have been involved in negotiating that. It's my understanding that only the chair did that, and that the rest of you did not see the contract until today. I don't think that's good procedure. I also have a lot of concerns about what would happen with a future board. If that board decides to end a contract early, it could cost our district hundreds of thousands of dollars. Money that would be better put to use in our classrooms and paying our teachers a better salary. I also oppose any attempt to make a 4-vote majority required to end a contract of the superintendent early. That would basically prevent any future board from making that change. I also oppose the policies that this current superintendent has demonstrated. Policies which show no respect for parental rights. He has made a number of changes in grades, discipline, policies, without any input from parents. Parents have the responsibility of raising their children first and foremost, and they should be involved in that, in school policy. Thank you very much.
Next, we have Elizabeth Cuevas Nunder.
Good afternoon. Pardon my Spanglish. Board members, superintendent, and everyone here. It's been a very long time I haven't been before you. For the past 30 years, my family have been taxpayers in Sarasota County. I am here as a citizen and a taxpayer. It has been many years since I have directed myself before this body. I have 3 graduated children that I am very proud, very successful, thanks to my husband and myself. We work directly with the teachers. And no, a village doesn't take to grow a child. It takes parents to grow a child and educate them. I mentor many students in Sarasota County, and I had a program, the Miss Latina program, 128 girls in 7 years in my house every Saturday with their moms. They're all graduated with 3 and 4.0 when they came to the program with 2 and below, thanks to the principals and teachers that we work hand in hand. I am here because I am very concerned how you are using my tax dollars. I have been an advocate for many years for parents and students. And in critical times, critical measures, has to be executed. We, the taxpayers, pay your salaries and the entire school board organization. We are the blood transfusion that makes you to exist. We taxpayers have granted the school board to be the eyes and ears of the taxpayers and place policies to ensure that our tax dollars are maximized to instruct and enhance the lives of our students and teachers. One, at the moment, the superintendent single-handed, without approval of the elected board, put in place gender guidelines that remove the parents from decision concerning their child's gender. This decision was grossly neglected from 3 elected officials. You happen to open a Pandora box. The second, the elected body has failed to put the brakes on developing an in-house police force that, rather going to the sheriff department, we who are the county elected and trained law enforcement, the superintendent was not the law enforcement and was not hired to be a law enforcement. Our nation has been experiencing a large number of human trafficking, children's sexual exploitation, and Sarasota County is not immune to the fact not having our sheriffs making sure. And I have the rest for you. I hope that, and I'm opposed to his contract.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cynthia Crowe.
Good afternoon, and thank you for allowing me to speak to you today. This subject, of course, has come before you before, but my granddaughter approached me and said to me, "Grandma, you have so much to say," which you know I do. "Why did you not speak up for young kids going into the bathroom, deciding which bathroom they want to go into?" I am a former 23-year guardian ad litem with the 12th Judicial Court System. And you want to know about predators? I've been to every class you can give about how they get to your children. They use everything in the book, things you haven't even heard of before. Now, my question is, do parents in our school system have to be informed of serious issues, social issues, or does the school board have the right to dictate social issues to our children? Now, these are the things that she's asked me to address you, so I'm doing that. Who decides what is best for our students socially? You or the parents? Who made the decision about children deciding which bathroom they choose? And this has nothing to do with transgender. Believe me, it doesn't. Without parental input. My big problem is, why are parents being abused and the school board deciding what social issues are best for our children? Respectfully, I say all of us do not agree on everything. You have your social issues, I have mine. But when it comes to our children, the parents have a right to decide what is good for their children. Please do not interpret this as a transgender issue, because it's not. You have placed our children in harm's way. Predators come in all sizes, shape, etc. Now, I'd like to know who thinks up this stuff. I told my I'm a grandma, great-grandmother, and I don't want to go to the second one. I told Ellie, if anybody goes into the bathroom And any boy, if you go into your bathroom and a boy comes and he touches you, I don't care if he's just putting his arm around you. You run to the teacher and then you call me, because I will file a lawsuit like you haven't seen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, Karl Hembree.
Hello. My name is Karl Hembree, and I'm a parent of 3 Sarasota County School students. I have served as either president or vice president on PTOs at both elementary and middle schools in Sarasota. I also sat on the foundation board, which provides funds for extra teachers at an elementary school in town, and I was privileged to sit on the principal search committee at an elementary school in town. It's an understatement to say that I love Sarasota County schools. Choosing a lead administrator is a huge deal. Extending or altering his or her contract should not be considered as a simple everyday decision. The voices of parents have not been adequately heard. The public and school board members should have more time to review something of this magnitude. Most importantly, the change in ability for the school board to provide oversight. Similar to what's being proposed and voted on today, excludes the voices of many parents. No contract should be made that would allow a superintendent to continue his or her role if more than half of the school board, the voice of the people, has lost confidence in this person. It appears that political maneuvering is governing the measures taken by our school board instead of the face value of the measure itself. To me, this appears to be an attempt to bind the hands of a future school board and is not necessary for Dr. Bowden to continue his job. I am unaware of any form of an ultimatum or demand made by Dr. Bowden stating he will leave if he is to be held accountable by a majority vote of the school board. If such a demand was made, then the public should have knowledge of it, and the school board should be very wary of continuing the relationship. This seems to be a measure to safeguard a current political view against a future election. I have had significant disagreements of decisions made by this board, but at least they represented the majority and will of members of this county, and I can full-heartedly respect that. Furthermore, I believe the superintendent is very well compensated, and our schools have many needs, some of which have been shared today, better suited for the additional funds mentioned in this contract, school resources, and our teacher salaries being at the top of that list. Giving a larger pay increase to our school's CEO than awarded to those whose hard-earned money pays his salary is simply appalling to me. This board should make a majority decision after receiving ample public input on the contract at hand and not use political maneuvering to keep future boards from doing the same thing. Thank you.
Next, we have Paul Schaefer.
I wish I could be kinder. Madam Chair, members of the Board of Education, and guests. I rise to speak against the proposed resolution concerning the contract of the Superintendent of Sarasota County Schools. Although I have reservations about the appointment itself, I am firmly opposed to a 4-year contract and vehemently opposed to the ill-advised provision that would require 4 out of 5 board members to remove a superintendent. This imprudent political stipulation is not only downright peculiar, but problematic, disgraceful, and insulting to the taxpayers of Sarasota. It carries a clear implication that Sarasota voters cannot be trusted. Sharp differences of opinion must be resolved by submission to the will of the majority. The principle of majority rules has been embedded in our history beginning with the Mayflower Compact in 1620. Yes, of course there are exceptions to this principle, but they are indeed exceptional. The routine hiring and dismissal of a county superintendent hardly rises to the level of, say, approving a constitutional amendment. The arrogance represented by this provision would be breathtaking even for seasoned politicians, let alone for, quote, nonpartisan school board members. Supporting this measure is showing nothing but disdain for the voters of Sarasota County. When the teachers of Sarasota County, who are the heart and soul of the school system, feel compelled to take out large ads voicing their concerns over a 4-year contract and the absurdity of requiring a supermajority of board members to relieve a superintendent of his or her duties, the public ought to listen, because warning bells do not come any louder. Common sense, of course, does not seem to carry as much weight in 2019 as it used to, but belief that majority rules still seems more than just a quaint notion to be cast aside for blatant political reasons. Sadly, many of us have learned to live with 4-letter words on television, with professional athletes making more than middies potentates, and even something called no-fat cheese. But yet, we have yet to submit to the idea that majority does not rule. Finally, say what you will about supporters of this bill, this resolution, you must admire their audacity.
Esther Warshwell.
Good afternoon. I've been a resident of Sarasota for 34 years, and my youngest son, went to Riverview. But I would like to remind Superintendent Bowden, Jane Goodwin, Carolyn Zucker, and Shirley Brown that Sarasota County is not California or New York. The majority of residents do not support pushing a liberal agenda here. Parents have the right to know what is going on in the schools, since it is their children, not yours, and they pay the taxes to support your salary. If Jane Goodwin will present a contract to the board today to lock in the superintendent for a long-term contract to make it difficult for future board members to undo, it is denying parents and the future board members of their freedom of choice. This contract also wants to award him with a big increase in his salary, for which we are highly disgusted with his mandate of allowing transgenders who suddenly decide they are now of the opposite sex to use the bathrooms and showers of their choice. If any child is attacked, the superintendent and the 3 school board members who approved this mandate should be held liable. No monies to defend them should come out of our taxes, but should come from them personally, since it was their decision and approval to do this. Thank you. I do have something that I would like you to see. I have made copies, and it has to do with a man who was a transgender, and one of the top ones, and was one of the biggest activists, and he transferred from male to female, and then again. And he believes that the gender identity is a fraud perpetrated by psychiatry, the likes of something the United States and other nations haven't experienced since the lobotomy era. As I return to my male birth sex, I no longer identify as a transgender and renounce all ties to transgenderism. I will not be a party to advancing harmful gender ideologies that are ruining lives, causing deaths by suicide, and contributing to the sterilization and mutilation of gender-confused children. Thank you.
Linda Reinrich. Give it to Kathy.
Thank you. This is going to be real short and sweet. I have followed a lot that's been going on in the school system for many years and have sought to be effective in the community. I worked with the young women in prison. I've worked with youth groups. I've done all kinds of things to really try to be there for ones that were out, even work with some of the charter schools, and learned a lot of interesting things. Sometimes we focus on stuff like bullying, and what we do is we create factions that divide and have hearsay when actually there's nothing there. And I've told young people, look, you've got to witness something. Don't just take hearsay. If somebody affronts your friend in a way that's not good, defend your friend. but, you know, don't get involved in something that's just hearsay. So I think sometimes we get carried away with a lot of social issues, and I feel like our schools are departing from the main role. Our young people are not learning math and science and things that they should learn to the extent that they should learn, and I'm frankly disgusted that we would be disregarding the community as much as we have. I think we really should have a lot more hearings. I think that a lot of us in the community are very opposed to involvement in any kind of psychological play acting or, you know, mentoring or whatever else. If children are psychologically disturbed, this should be something that should be brought to the attention of the parents, and the parents should have a right to determine which way to go. And I'm concerned about brainwashing, because I know there's a considerable amount that goes on with all kinds of media. I read a lot of things over the years, and I've seen absolute errors in factual statements, mostly opinion, a lot of opinionated stuff bandied about. So I'm concerned about putting in place a system that could backfire even under someone's best intentions, and how you're going to control that. So I'm not in favor of a lot of the things that we're doing right now. We're spending a lot of money on psychological stuff that I'm not sure is really essential to the learning process. I don't think we should be involved in so many social issues, and I think we are very much disregarding and being arrogant against our community and our parents. And I feel like all of you should be spending more time out in the public, not just within the educational circles you're in, that you should be getting out in the community and listening to the voice of the people. You know, I know teaching is hard, and I know that it's a real challenge today with the multiple problems of failing homes and other things that go on, but it doesn't change the roles of authorities that were established by God. I've said before that children are a gift of God. They are to the parents, but the parents have the responsibility for training them up in the way they should go.
Thank you.
That's all I want to say.
Sherry Dembinski.
Good afternoon. My name is Sherry Dembinski. I'm a taxpayer and a teacher. As a veteran teacher of 22 years in this county, I find it shocking and disappointing and appalling that Superintendent Bowden could potentially be given a guaranteed 4-year contract filled with huge raises and bonuses, while we have hundreds of teachers who have been in the county since 2009 who are on a year-to-year contract, same as administrators. I've worked alongside many of these teachers who deserve job security as much as anyone. I'm surprised and disappointed that Ms. Goodwin, who I worked with many years ago to get the referendum passed the first time, has made such an about-face on what best serves the students of this district. While a superintendent may have a vision for the district, his success comes off the backs of the students, the classified, and the teaching staff at each school site. I urge you to postpone the vote on this contract until there is clarity in its construction and consideration for public input of the taxpayers. Thank you.
Lorna Samaroy.
Hello, my name is Lorna Samori, and I am pretty much new to Sarasota within the last 5 years. I've had a long and varied work background, but I am licensed as a teacher, and I have attempted to work here in Sarasota County when I first came down. I've decided to open my own business. I did work for a little while at a charter school in Manatee County. And after 3 months of working there, it seemed that my view of teaching was completely different than theirs. Process was more important. The face of raising money was more important than the children learning. And so I had to make a very painful decision to resign. And I took a teaching position overseas. I worked in a third world country, teaching 4th grade at an American curriculum school. And I was there for a couple years. And I have to say that I moved down here from Montgomery County, Maryland, where I helped train students in voting programs as a chief election judge. So the students there could not graduate high school without doing community service, and so I had a future voting program. So Montgomery County is a very liberal county, and when I moved down here, I thought that I would find essentially something opposite. But with what you're proposing, not only the contract, which I am opposed to, I think that you need more public input on that, but the role of parents in the process of educating their children should not be left to a decision that a parent would make whether or not to put their child in a private school or a public school. I'm a taxpayer. Everybody here are taxpayers. And as has been said before, our taxes pay your salaries. You're supposed to work for us, and you're supposed to work for the children. And a parent shouldn't have to be put into a position of saying, I don't agree with how the school board is deciding to enter social issues or gender issues or whatever other issues, and if I don't like that, then I have to continue to pay my taxes, but I have to put my child in a paid private school so that I can have the upbringing and the training and the education that I think my child deserves. No parent should have to be put into that position. The majority of people here in Sarasota, I think, and you can test my theory, are against social issues being sort of put on the backs of children, especially elementary school aged children. We have a law that children are minors until they're 18. There's a reason for that. They're juveniles. They do not have their own standing in law. They have to have guardian ad litems. The parents are their guardians. They don't make their own decisions until they're 18. I would hope.
Thank you.
Please consider that.
Brent Gibbs.
Hello. I was here for the first school board meeting of the year on January 10th. And if you remember, I spoke about the website oncegay.com. To refresh your memory, and for those who were not at the meeting, it is a website and movement that shares the stories of people from all walks of life and all ages that have come out of the LGBTQ+ lifestyle. From these stories, you learn how it was experiences such as sexual abuse, identity issues, insecurities, confusions, and tendencies that led them into this lifestyle. But once those deeper issues were dealt with, they no longer chose their alternative lifestyle. I hope you are able to visit the website and read firsthand these stories on oncegay.com. I share this movement with you again today due to the policies and procedures that have been instituted by this board and superintendent concerning gender identity. Again, I believe you care for all the children that you have the privilege of overseeing. But I believe these policies and procedures are actually hindering our children and sabotaging them from the opportunity of dealing with the deeper issues in their hearts that are causing confusion, hurt, pain, and even suicide. Putting a Band-Aid on a tumor won't help the person. Encouraging actions that may be results of greater, deeper issues is not heroic. It does not set a good example for our students either. Letting parents know about these actions is vital to the welfare of these children. I know this subject is vast and complex, but to institute policies and procedures without addressing all the implications of this, such as this lifestyle is a result of a much greater turmoil, is missing the mark. We must do better for our children. What I am addressing is that people have come out of the LGBTQ+ lifestyle and said it was an unhealthy lifestyle for them. They are saying it was a wrong path or a detour for them. When they resolved the deeper issues in their lives, that lifestyle dissolved away. My hope is that in the course of time, you will listen to those in the community who have different opinions, experiences, and vantage points, and that you will reconsider your policy that was instituted very one-sidedly. As a mother of this community, this policy must change for the betterment and health of our students, and the children of this community must be stewarded well. Thank you.
Thank you. Shannon Wozniak.
Hi, thank you for letting me address you. I just want to take a moment to let you know that the people of this county are becoming fed up with the arrogance. None could have been more displayed than by Ms. Goodwin when she was interviewed and told that these people sitting right here don't matter. Let me assure you we do. Let me assure you you are voted there. Let me assure you you don't have to stay. Under no circumstances, and especially with you writing the one-sided contract for this man, it is not in our favor. It is not in his favor. How could you throw such, you can look away, you can roll your eyes, as I've seen you on your phones, as I've seen you being disrespectful to everyone who's listening, who's spoken. No way can you justify the tax dollars of $200 and something plus $1,000 for one man. It's not possible. You guys have taken and hijacked a system that is meant to protect, teach, and deliver our children and have not done what is right. Children are, you patted yourself on the back today for the gain of children where they have not gained in certain areas, but lost. I've volunteered, I've helped, I teach, all of these things, and yet I see arrogance only pouring out and not real help. Because let me tell you, a real servant's heart gets down in the dirt. A real servant's heart says, how can I help? It doesn't say, how can I get paid more? How can I benefit myself? And how can I kick out all of these people and what they do to vote for you? We trust you. We thought you were going to make good decisions for us. By the grace of God, we have Bridget and we have Eric who said, listen, we are your fighters. We are your people. Be aware, we are giving you fair warning. These people are taking back their districts. I would reconsider your thoughts. I would reconsider what you're doing. Your agenda is well pushed. You have made your point, so will we. Thank you.
Tracy Williams.
Good afternoon, school board members, Madam Chair, Mr. Bowden. I, too, agree with everything that Shannon Wozniak just said. I appreciate you, Bridget Ziegler, and also Eric Robinson, for continuously engaging the public, letting them know what's coming up when these meetings are here and taking place. And the reason why is because all of these things are being done behind the backs of each and every voter. We don't mind if you make a good, decent living. That's not the problem. But you have to look at, when you leave, what happens when somebody takes your place? Let's say this contract's good for you. Let's say that all these people are replaced with people you don't like. Guess what? Your policies are now transferred to the next generation. But on the other hand, and I speak for America First, I have a complete agenda to go after every single seat in here that supports your proposal today. So if Ms. Goodwin wants to go ahead and do that, let it be on notice that we're going to raise your voter base and let them know what you've done. This is a double black eye for you, and I don't think you realize it. You can smile and think, oh no, my name recognition will save me in this county. No, it will not. Because everyone in here is saying, I'm not happy with your decisions. I'm not happy with the last time you made a decision. You need to make good decisions for our children. We need to be able to count on your leadership, even yours. You still have a chance to turn this mess around. And I would say to you, don't look at your own pocket. Like she said, get down in the dirt. Share your wealth. Let someone else have maybe a little portion of what you think you deserve. Because it's important that we raise our children to give instead of take, to offer a hand out instead of, no, this is mine, I'm going to be selfish. We need to set an example of who we are as Sarasota County. And I believe both Bridget Ziegler and Eric Robinson does a great job of that on Facebook and throughout the public and going to each and every place that they have to get their message across to save our county. So I'd ask you to do the same. I don't want to replace you if you can make good decisions, but I ask you to reconsider what you're doing here today. Thank you.
Ms. Williams, I'm going to say to you and to others, do not attack the superintendent or anyone on this dais. It's not appropriate. It's not civil. And I hope that all of you will make your comments to the board, but do not make comments in this way. It is not the proper thing to do. No comments from the audience, please. You can be removed. You can and will be removed. John McAward.
Good afternoon. I'm here to address several issues regarding the extension of the contract for the superintendent. We were 8 years with Lori White as the superintendent, and the only thing I ever read about Lori White in the newspapers were good things. I didn't read about her ever being accused of sexual harassment. I didn't see any conflict with Sheriff Knight over policing in the schools. I didn't see her start a new Department of Security and get it off to such a poor start. And I never saw her mentioned when it came to teachers being able to affect discipline in the schools, but something that has been severely hampered under the current superintendent with the John Russo case at Brookside Middle School. We are operating under a cloud as far as I'm concerned. And what I would like, the last time I spoke here regarding the Brookside Middle School situation, I urged the members of the school board to look at the videos, to examine the case, to speak to teachers. I don't know whether that happened, but if it didn't happen, it's a disgrace that it hasn't. And I urge you to now, before you sign off on this contract, to re-examine that situation. I also ask, at the last time with the sexual harassment charges, the 3 women were all took polygraphs. 2 of them, the polygraphs proved that they were credible. The 3rd was disqualified, not because she was not credible, but because her nervousness rendered the effects of the polygraph ineffective. I urge the board to propose 4 more polygraphs under their supervision, the superintendent and the 3 women. If the superintendent refuses a polygraph, or if he has failed results, that should be a red light for the board. And if regarding the Brookside School, I urge you to visit the schools, talk with the teachers in confidence, not with the principal or the assistant principal in tow, but ask them, how has discipline in the school been impacted by the way the school board, the school office has conducted itself with regard to John Russo? Thank you.
Connie Bruni.
Hi, my name is Connie Bruni. I'm from Englewood, Florida. I'm also a taxpayer in the city of Northport. My first time being here. I've lived in Sarasota County for roughly 5 years, and I will tell you, full disclosure, my husband and I escaped California. Some folks were asking earlier about this whole bathroom issue. I will tell you that is where it started. And I have grandchildren there, and we escaped that whole mess on purpose. And I am exceedingly concerned to hear that this is occurring in the county where we chose to come and escape the tyranny of what I considered disgraceful activity going on in the state of California. So I'm very concerned about that. I hope you will look at that. With regard to item number 27, this has to do with your policies and procedures. Item 1D, the word American has been uncapitalized. That made me a little uncomfortable. And with regard to home education, the district will not provide a regular high school diploma to home education students. My question is, why not? And I'm not an educator, so these are honest questions. I don't know the answer. And that's section 4.70, item number 2. I know you can't answer me now because I'm not on your agenda. I understand that, so it's okay. The other item is item number 29. And that is the agreement, which I did look up. It was page number, where did I find it? 435 to 446 out of the 461 pages of backup material that were available for today's agenda. I know what it's like to have to read all of that, so I understand. It's a lot. I have serious concerns regarding section number 1.1 and 9.9. Those do not seem to be standard. They are binding upon future boards, and they become a poison pill. Not good. Number 3.2, that is tantamount to polling. I have a question regarding the Sunshine Law with regarding to polling of all of you as board members, meeting with the superintendent prior to his evaluation being completed. Number 4.5, an annuity in addition to retirement does seem a bit high to me. I don't know if that's a standard procedure in other counties. It did seem unusual. 4.7, 4.8, and 4.9 appear to overlap financially. I'm wondering if that's seemed very odd to me. And you have to know I used to negotiate contracts for a living, so I read this stuff. 8.1, 8.3, 8.4, and 8.6. Supermajority requirement is just flat wrong. Sorry, just flat wrong. Frankly, I consider it un-American. I think the gentleman who made the comment earlier about it just being unfair, un-American, I don't have another way to put that. No one gets a guaranteed job, and we will hold you accountable as voters for your decision.
Thank you. Lena Reed.
I had 3 kids that went through the school system, and then we turned around and adopted a 7-year-old. So I've never been compelled to attend any Sarasota County School Board meetings until now. And the first one that I attended, I was really quite shocked. It was about the transgender policy. And I always thought that the school board was supposed to do the greatest good for the greatest number. And Shirley Brown set us all straight on that. It is not that policy. I don't know where that went wrong. I am against a long-term contract. And I'd like to understand, the last time that I was able to read anything, it said that your salary was $185,000. plus $15,000 performance pay, plus $2,000 annual special qualification pay, plus 20 days of annual leave, and all the school holidays up to 60 days paid leave, 500 business expense supplement, 650 auto expense supplement, both of which you don't even have to really do. You could just ask for them ahead of time, not to mention retirement annuities, insurance, and I mean, my God, how much do we need to make? That just seems like an exorbitant amount to me. I feel like this school board has a liberal agenda as well as a financial agenda, and I'm speaking to the majority. I'm very happy for Eric and Bridget that they are on the board, and we need to get more people like them on the board. I feel like the board sat so long that they perhaps can't remember that they're public servants. There is a bill right now that was proposed. It's called HJR 229, and it puts an 8-year term limit on the school board, and I'm going to be voting for that. Just so you know, Carolyn Zucker is coming up in 2020, and the rest of you have 4 more years. So we'll be getting some qualified people. I know you too, Eric, but I'm going to vote for you. All right. Thank you.
Dan DeLeo.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dan DeLeo. I'm a lawyer by trade, but I'm appearing here as a father and a citizen who's very concerned about Sarasota County schools and has shown that level of concern by volunteering literally thousands of hours in support of Sarasota County schools over the last 14 years. I serve, as some of you know, on the Financial Advisory Committee. That's the committee that is responsible for reviewing budgets, for acting as a watchdog with respect to referendum funding, and making recommendations to the school board. And I've served in that capacity for more than a decade. During that period, I've had an opportunity to observe the superintendent and work with him and the other school board members and staff. I have served on various ad hoc committees over the course of the last 14 years, including with respect to capital spending, impact fees, and other issues. I'm currently the president of an organization called Citizens for Better Schools. This is a grassroots citizens organization that's responsible for putting on the referendum. As you folks know, the referendum contributes more than $55 million every year to the budget of the Sarasota County schools. As you may recall, in the last cycle, Citizens for Better Schools and the county and us as taxpayers were successful in passing the referendum overwhelmingly. And in that capacity, I had the opportunity to work closely with the superintendent. I'm also a father of 2 public school students. I have a 5th grader at Southside Elementary School, and I have a 9th grader at Pineview. And I've volunteered, as I have in all of the capacities that I've just mentioned with Sarasota County schools, at my local schools. I've been involved there and talked to teachers and had an opportunity to observe the effect of the work the superintendent and the board has done over the last 14 years. I say those things as bona fides for this message. My message is the superintendent has earned this contract, and I appear here today to support the notion as a taxpayer and as someone who's had an opportunity to watch the superintendent work closely for years, that he deserves this contract. We are an A-rated district. He has maintained that A rating. He and the school board and the staff and the teachers, he has provided the direction and worked very hard to keep those metrics high. We are a high-performing district trending higher. The superintendent is partly responsible for that fact. That fact, along with his performance, recommends a contract so that he doesn't have the sword of Damocles hanging over his head, and he can do his job, which is to continue to improve Sarasota County schools. Thank you.
Kurt Lavarella.
Good afternoon, board, school board, Dr. Bowden, and guests here today. I also, I'm Karl Hembree, and I'm the executive director of the School Safety Advocacy Council, a national organization that works with well over 100 districts across the country and law enforcement agencies. My background is law enforcement. I moved here to Sarasota County 15 years ago, and my 2 children graduated from Sarasota County schools. I moved here primarily because at the time, Sheriff Bockwell was the sheriff, and he was so fond of making sure our kids stayed safe. And I've made a life and a career out of making sure that we do all we can do to keep our children safe. As I traveled around, even last week, I was out at the superintendent's conference out in California. There isn't a district right now that isn't focused on making safety a priority. And I always say to districts, you know, part of the problem is we're such a resilient nation, and that's good in a way, but we often bounce back from these horrific incidents, and we quickly become complacent, and then we become vulnerable again for the next attack. And we know that's probably not too far around the corner. And the one thing I tell districts all the time is to focus on consistency of leadership within the district. That is fundamentally important as we move forward, especially in changing times with a new law here in the state of Florida. We got off to a little bit of a rocky start with the transition to a school district police department, but I will tell you, I've worked for both. I worked for a school district police department, and I worked for a law enforcement agency, Fort Lauderdale, and both of which, I will tell you, if you do it right, a school district police department can be leaps and bounds above that of a sheriff's department or a local agency, because 100% of their focus is going to go into keeping our kids safe. And let's never forget, that's got to be the #1 priority. And I applaud Dr. Bowden and the school board for taking this bold step to move forward in that direction, and to make that consistency by extending the contract to Dr. Bowden. I think that extends the leadership of this district as we move forward into what may be some speed bumps along the road as we see the school safety take different shapes with elected leaders across the state. So I applaud that. I hope you never lose sight of the fact that consistency is a good thing. I can't think of a better chief that you've assigned here with Chief Tim Enos, and I've had the opportunity to talk to Jeff Maltzby, and I know, more importantly, that the safety of our kids is in your hearts, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate the work you've done, Dr. Bowden. Thank you.
Thank you. And that ends our hearing of citizens. Let's move on now to our additions or corrections to our agenda. Dr. Bowden, do we have corrections?
Yes, in regards to the consent agenda, item 7, approval of the instructional classified personnel report, there's an addendum. And then item 29, there's a new attachment.
Do I have a motion?
I move we accept the agenda as amended.
Second.
Now, how do we vote?
Are we voting?
Aye.
No, wait a minute. Where's our voting machine? We have a new system. I will apologize for that. It's not coming up.
Oh, here it goes, for or against.
There we are. Okay. Please vote.
I can't find my...
Your clicker.
I think I'm funny.
Yeah, you're like Krista. You guys think you're like the
There you go.
Confirm it.
Somebody's got it.
Yeah.
Did you vote, Mrs.?
I did.
Well, it's okay.
It looks
and
like it's unanimous.
that measure passes 5-0. We have any items pulled for comment? No. Now let's move on to new business.
I move the approval of the charter between Dreamers Academy Charter School and the Sarasota County School Board.
Second.
Any comments? Mr. Robinson?
I'll be voting against it for consistency. I voted against every for-profit charter school, and this will be vote consistently with that.
Kills me.
Mrs. Brown?
I'll be voting for this. I don't believe it is a for-profit school. It's being run, and it's a local school, and it is targeted for people with Spanish language and individuals who will be working. It's a dual language school. I think it's something that we can look at as a way to perhaps improve the achievement gap for some of our Hispanic students, and also to offer a new option from some of our other students that would like to learn Spanish starting in an elementary school, where we hear that it's supposed to be the most advantageous time to start.
Mrs. Ziegler?
I too will be supporting this measure. I know I've said this before, but it goes without. I want to make sure I restate it. Is that I think that this is a great example of the innovation that can occur with charter schools to help satisfy a need that perhaps traditional public schools are either not satisfying or just an alternative option. I think dual language is something that is a great benefit for both English language learners and for English learners. But I really do. I applaud the innovation that's coming through this. I know there's a lot of excitement in this community for it. I know that Dr. Bowden worked with you guys on trying to make this work. It's definitely was out of the box. And I also want to thank the Charter Review Committee because there was a lot of work involved in this. And I know you guys put your heart into trying to ensure that, one, you give us strong guidance to see that school be successful, but also work with them closely so that they are successful. I think I can't say it enough how truly pleased I am with the staff that we have inside our Office of School Choice, because I know that does not exist in many of the other counties in the state. And as someone who is a vocal advocate of school choice, I really want to thank the Office of School Choice just for continually being there as supporting all of our charter schools. And I just, again, my hat's off to you, because I know it's a huge undertaking with very few people to help. So I will be supporting this. I look forward to lots of success. And, my thing is that whatever we can do to see you guys be successful, because that is our students being successful, we are here for you. So thank you.
Mrs. Zucker. I'm doing that all day, haven't I? These are giving me a problem.
Why don't you just call me Caroline, because you can't get my last name right. I will be supporting this charter as well. And I think we need to have a workshop on the definition of for-profit, because this is not a for-profit charter school. This is part of the district's charter schools, and I don't think she's going to be making, or they'll be making, any money on this, because we have a lot of Spanish-speaking children here that can really benefit by your charter. And thank you very much for bringing it forward and for working with the district, because this was not easy for you. Thank you.
Well, I also would like to mention that I will be supporting this. I know that Jerry Chafee and her cadre of people, including her fabulous husband, have worked long and hard on this. If I was doing a marketing campaign of any kind, I would want her on my team and at first base. I think it's a really important immersion, is a really important concept, and I think it's good for students to be immersed in both languages, and I'm looking forward to working with her. She knows I'd like to speak Spanish better than, a couple of words. And so we're hoping that maybe I can get involved in some way. But I think that it's creative. It's out of the box. It's the kind of thing that charter schools were intended for 20 years ago when they first started. So I'm particularly excited. I also would like to thank Dr. Natalie Roca and the committee. Dr. Roca has worked really hard, and her staff for some years now on charter schools. We have not had new application this February, and she will be retiring and leaving us at the end of the month, and I'm so sad because it will be a big loss for us. But her husband is retired, and they have great plans for their future and starting a new life and a new season, if you will. So my thoughts and best wishes for her, and my best wishes for the Dreamers Academy. So if there are no more comments, please vote. And this measure passes 4-1. Mr. Robinson voting nay. And I see that on my screen now, so that's pretty neat, isn't it? Because I can't read it all the way back. And the next item that we have up in our new business.
I move that we table item number 29 to a subsequent board meeting for final ratification, affording the public the opportunity to view the final revision of the proposed contract for Superintendent Bowden.
Second.
Mrs. Brown?
I'm going to respectfully disagree with that. We had a discussion this morning, as is the process for doing a contract. We went over item by item, and I think we're prepared to vote for it now. I see no more reason to politicize this further.
Mrs. Ziegler?
Thank you. Actually, I don't know that giving the public an opportunity to view any final amendments on an important contract such as the superintendent's would be defined as political. Unfortunately, I would respectfully disagree. I appreciate today that we were able to go through line by line and discuss some changes that had been brought forward, and I thank our general counsel who worked vigorously to make those changes. There were a couple of items that were potentially going to be discussed today that may be revised for further discussion. And again, in the sake of transparency and given the significance of this contract and the importance of it, I think it affords it's again a best practice to allow the final draft to just be out for final ratification and then allowing the public an opportunity to view it.
Well, if there are no more comments, Mrs. Zucker.
I believe that we have made all of the comments that we need to make about this, and we have discussed this about 2 hours this morning. The changes that have been made are not significant changes. As a matter of fact, one of the proposed changes, and I have to let you know all this, because this is what your superintendent does. Mr. Robinson wanted to increase Dr. Bowden's contract by $30,000 more a year, and Dr. Bowden turned it down. He said he didn't need that extra money and that the contract that we were proposing was a fair contract. So I don't know why you're so against a man who is willing to not take $30,000 extra a year.
Is it a bonus?
And a bonus. So
Mr. Robinson.
Just to clarify, I did not propose that we increase the superintendent's give him a raise of $30,000. Actually, what I proposed was that if he was to make us #1 in the state, that he would get a bonus for achieving a goal. I think making our school district #1 in the state would create economic benefit to us. I think it would cause corporations to come move here. I think it would create jobs. I think incentivizing him, I said this many times, that if he does good jobs, my exact word was I would make it rain, meaning I would give him additional money. I have no problems if somebody works hard, achieves their goals, makes the district better, that they should get more pay. I was rather consistent about that. I said it repeatedly, so I'm just shocked that it's on the communicator to make sure that they deliver the message, but I just want to make sure that that is made perfectly clear again. I had offered that if he met certain milestones, and the 30,000 milestone had to do with making us #1 in the state. I also, point of full disclosure, I also said to give him a $15,000 bonus if the district set up particular goals for him to meet. And if he made those particular goals, I would agree that he should get a bonus for that. Those all died. There was no ability to manage automatic raises, no ways to set goals. So I just want to make sure that they set the record straight. I did not advocate to increase his pay $30,000.
Mrs. Brown.
Madam Chair, I'd like to vote on this and then perhaps entertain another motion, and then rather than having all these discussions go through like we did this morning, item by item, if we got issues on item 1 or 2 or 3, that we can discuss them so that the public won't be lost in where we're going and back and forth. I thought we had a very thorough discussion of it this morning. It probably won't take us long to go through it this morning, but let's talk about what's really in the contract, because there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I think what we need to do is, I would like to get us in a position to either vote this motion down, and I'll offer another one, but so that we can get in a position so we can discuss it.
Well, I think we have discussed it enough, and I think that Mr. Hardy is prepared to go over the changes that were made to the contract. You're advocating to go through the entire contract. You have to. I'm going to do that, but I'm just trying to understand.
Should we go through the contract before we? Yeah, well, we go through the contract.
Let's go ahead and go and vote on the motion that's on the table, which is to
table the item
table the item until a further board meeting. So we'll do that in And a voice vote, Mrs. Brown?
No.
Mrs. Zucker?
No.
Mr. Robinson?
Yep.
Mrs. Ziegler?
Yes.
And the chair votes no. So the motion fails 3-2.
I move the approval of item 29, the superintendent's employment contract.
Second.
Discussion. Mrs. Brown?
I would like to go through, let the our attorney take us through item by item like we did this morning, and if those people have comments on that item specifically, to discuss those items at that time so that we don't have to talk about several different items all at once and perhaps confused, so that we can then get to our closing arguments rather than opening arguments, so that we can talk about details and then make our case before we vote.
Mr. Robinson.
I don't know what to say after what she just said. Oh. Mine had to do global in nature, so I'm not exactly sure. Am I to make a comment on global in nature, or
global? You mean
global.
The
yes.
whole contract?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I just
make
wanted
to comment.
I just wanted to know how we were going to proceed based upon Mrs. Brown's comments. I have two overarching issues with the contract. The first one's from a policy point of view, a management point of view. I think our main job as a relationship with the superintendent is as an employer-employee relationship, as a board CEO. And so we need to have certain tools in our toolbox, so to speak, when you have that type of relationship. And this should be immaterial of whether you think the person is doing a good job or not, whether you like the person, you don't like the person. So what are the three nexuses? You got to be able to hire that person. You got to be able to fire that person, and you got to be able to incentivize that person. He's already hired, so you only have two left, okay? And so of those two, let's take those and see how it appears. So one of the things is we are changing it to, it's virtually going to be impossible to fire him given the particular situation. I'm not saying that anybody wants to fire him. In fact, I would like to just renew his contract for another year. And if anybody has issues with his job performance, maybe we can manage him up and give him an annual contract just like every other teacher in the district. The other thing was when it comes to incentivizing pay. That's why I kept bringing out the bonuses, was in order to drive human behavior and to incentivize. That is not an uncommon situation for CEOs. Most CEOs are performance-based. This is what this is the direction the board wants you to go into in a global situation. If you go into that general situation, we're going to incentivize you for going in that situation. General bonus. The other part is raises. You evaluate the person. If they're performing within certain parameters, they get a certain raise. If they exceed those parameters, they get a higher raise. Well, guess what? This contract gets rid of the bonus, which we had before the existing contract, which I would favor renewing, but I don't have the votes, gave him a $15,000 bonus if he met the goals of the district. Now, when we set our goals, they're going to be, I don't even know what value they were going to be, because there's no incentive for him to follow those goals. Raises are going to be automatic. So theoretically, he could get an unsatisfactory evaluation 4 years in a row, and it's not going to affect his salary. That's not a good contract to make. That is irregardless of whether you think the person's doing a good job now, whether you like the person, whether you think the person's doing a bad job. You set up this framework and define the relationship, and the relationship is defined within the contract. And to not take those into consideration, I don't think is good policy making. I don't think that's good management, not to take those things into consideration. The other issue I have is more of a micro level, given we're in the school district, and that has to do with a CEO that leads by example. And the issue is we fought. We, meaning the administration, fought with the teachers to put them on merit pay, to say you have to perform in order to get a particular raise. Your evaluation has to be a certain amount in order to get a raise. They were out picketing, regarding that issue, how much their raises should be. That we took them off the step calendar so that you didn't get an automatic raise. So to do that to our employees, and then to go backwards and do the same and do the reverse to the superintendent, I think sends the wrong message to our teachers. We not only did we talk a lot about the contract this morning, we also talked about recruitment and retention of teachers. And you've got to lead by example. When teachers see that they're treated one way and we're teacher treated another, it's not a good thing. I just found out after reading the contract that we were paying for 100% of his health insurance. And don't worry about me. I'm fine, but I get the health insurance here, so I see how much money is left over in my paycheck after I pay for the health insurance. And so we get paid. It's embarrassing. I give away my salary, but it is embarrassing when we get paid. It's a whole other issue. We get paid roughly $40,000, which is a little bit less than what a starting teacher gets paid. So after they pay for their health insurance, they only have about $1,000 left in their paycheck, and then to expect them to live off that. So to require him to get, who makes $200,000, to get a certain benefit, that you have starting teachers who are trying to find rent, trying to find housing, trying to make their way in the world, having to pay for this, the inequities are so huge. So how in the heck am I going to sit there up here? I think we're too high. We should be down below, and you guys should be raised up high, my personal opinion. To sit there and say that it's good enough for the CEO, but it's not good enough for the line staff. I just have a huge problem with that. So macro level, incentivizing, managing your employee, to leading by example, and making sure that everybody is held to the same standard, whether you're a teacher's aide, or you're the bus driver, or you're the CEO of the organization. For those reasons, I'm going to be voting against it. And I really don't see any reason to go line by line, because I think we all know where we stand.
Excuse me.
Well, I'd like to make a comment before you, Mrs. Brown. Everybody knows that I had something to do with creating this contract. First of all, the medical insurance part that you mentioned, you pay for it. All teachers get free medical insurance. We're one of the few districts that get, no, but per person, we get free medical insurance. So if a person is not covering others within their family, they get, I just wanted to make sure we weren't.
No one's talking about the family, that's what I was talking about.
Okay, but for the family, that's very true. It does cost a lot of money. The annual contract, yes, is for teachers, and I don't like it, but that's state statute. And I think that we get in danger when we compare our teachers and what the teacher gets to a CEO of an organization. This contract is between the board. This contract is between the board and the CEO. It is between the board and the CEO, and it's not because we don't care for the input, but it's because there are so many things that can be misconstrued, as happened over the weekend, either by a news reporter who took something I said out of context, or a Republican Party email that went out that was not accurate, or some things that went out to other parties, other political parties in the county. So there are some telling issues there, and I will just say this: I think the contract is fair. I think it's a good contract. It gives him an additional 3 years. He has 1 year remaining on his contract, which we had to ratify and revised by June of this year. Because of some things that we have on our calendar in the March, April, May timeframe, we decided to move it up now and do it now. And that's why it was moved forward. There will be an evaluation in the fall. There will be some other things that take place. And I'm happy if everybody wants to go through the particulars of it in any form that you'd like us to do that, because there is a lot of miscommunication that was mentioned during the citizens' hearing that I am aware of. Mrs. Brown.
What I wanted to get away from was what it looked like was, closing comments. There's misinformation out there, and I think we need to go under the items to say, okay, this is what it says, and we can discuss. That's why we support this. You can go on to the next item. If we list 10 different things in the contract. We support this or not this, or why this or why that. It gets lost in the whole drama of what we're saying. I would like to go item by item so people understand why we're doing it this way. And hopefully there won't have to be the same dragged out conversations we had this morning, because we've come to some understanding of why it's there. But, you know, I think what happened this morning, I mean, maybe we have a better understanding, but there's a lot of people in the public, because that's what we want to do. We want to educate the public of what this is and why we're doing it. I mean, that's what they've asked for. I think we owe it to the public to go we don't have to go through word by word, but let's go through the issues about, okay, why are we having it, the terms, the job responsibilities, I think we can brush over, and some of those other things. But I think the public deserves to know what's in the contract, what is and isn't there.
Mr. Hardy, let's go through it.
All right. Starting with the first paragraph is the term of the contract. It would start tomorrow and run through June 30, 2023. The current contract expires June 30, 2020, and requires the board to make a decision by June 30th of this year as to whether it will be extended for an additional year to 2021. This contract does not have a similar rollover provision. It simply runs until June 30, 2023.
No.
Well, if we want to talk, I would think
we're going to have him go through, and then we're not going to. I mean, if we have to stop it and answer something, we can do that. Let me. Mrs. Ziegler.
I just wanted to, and I think I'm glad you brought this up, because I forgot to bring it up today. Good Lord, is the evergreen provision that we had in our previous one. In a way, I think it allows for succession planning, and we haven't really addressed whether or not that removal is giving us. I mean, that evergreen policy really allowing us to make a decision a year. Am I right? It's a year in advance, kind of giving the opportunity to either renew or make a decision in a year. I mean, a year before the contract expires, similar to what we have right now.
Well, right now you would have to make a decision by June 30, 2019. To decide if you wanted to extend the contract until 2021. Right now, the contract, regardless of what the board would do, goes to June 30, 2020. But it's set up so that each year, starting in 2019, you would be making a decision, do you tack an additional year on it, so that there is always 2 years ahead.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Presumably with this contract, it doesn't have that provision, but there would need to be a conversation with the board and the superintendent sometime well in advance of June 30, 2023 to decide, are you extending the relationship beyond that point?
Okay. Mrs. Brown.
I think that I think it's important to put into context. School board members are elected for 4 years. Elected superintendents are elected for 4 years, and so to say that we'll have a superintendent for 4 years, I think gives him and the board, some consistency so we can go forward. We should be able to know. I mean, maybe I don't know that I'll be here in June of 2022. Maybe I will. But, I mean, I know that we need to make a decision, and maybe we won't. Maybe the decision will have been made before June of 2022, whether or not we're going to extend his contract, or not. But, I mean, I think one of the reasons we've brought this forward in the first place was to sort of put to rest some of the wrangling that has been going on about whether or not we keep the superintendent or not. We need consistency. We need to put some of this aside. And I think that I would like, because I know there's people out there that want to get rid of the superintendent. I've been asked to offer an amendment, a motion. I've been asked to offer amendments to protect him also. That was before the election, whether I supported somebody or not. My vote wasn't for sale. I'd like to say right now, let's put this in there. That's why I'm supporting the 4 years. Elected school board members are 4 years. The elected superintendents are 4 years. Where our other contract would have been for 2-year increments, this will be for 4 years. And I think for the consistency our district needs, I think it'll help us.
We're looking really at stabilizing the board, and that was my intention, is to stabilize the board and to get away from some of the political wrangling that goes on aside from what happens at this board table. And that was my concern and my intention. Mr. Robinson.
Yeah. To compare it against the elected superintendent is not fair because, one, an elected superintendent, because of that consistency they have, they get paid anywhere from a half to a third of what our superintendent gets paid. So there's a trade-off there, and to not recognize that. Two, elected superintendents are let go with majority vote. That's how elected superintendents are taken. So if you want to compare, you shouldn't be able to cherry pick. I like this from this one. I like this from that one. And if you guys are concerned about political, I think this puts political wrangling into it. So if I think you guys are insinuating that I don't want him to stay or whatever, I'm willing to put up now. I've said it before. I'll do it right now. I make a motion that we exercise the option in his existing contract to extend his employment for another year.
What?
There's a motion on it.
There's already a motion.
Well, I amend the motion to.
We're not.
Well, see, you can't have it both ways. You can't sit there and say, oh, you guys want to get rid of him, but then when I want to make a motion to extend his contract, you can't cherry pick. You gotta be able to be consistent.
Let's do what we're doing and discussing with Mr. Hardy right now, which is the topic at hand.
What's the motion on the floor?
The motion on the floor is to approve the contract, and we are discussing the contract.
Who made that motion?
Sure.
I did.
And who seconded it?
I did.
Okay. I didn't realize that. Okay.
Stay awake.
I'm awake.
Mrs. Brown.
You should talk.
I normally don't like to point fingers. Some people think I do, but I think you're being a little disingenuous here because you have asked me to file a motion to fire the superintendent.
That is not true, and I'm willing to make a motion to extend his employment right now.
I would ask our attorney, have I called you on more than one occasion with that information?
So you lied to him.
I would like to ask our attorney if I've called him on more than one occasion to say that Mr. Robinson has asked me to fire the superintendent and join him in firing the superintendent.
I try to make sure that each of your conversations with me remain between us, and I think that's in everyone's best interest.
Thank you.
Let's proceed.
Paragraph 2 is entitled Job Responsibilities. It's fairly boilerplate and similar to what is in the current contract. Paragraph 3 is about evaluation. It sets forth the evaluation to occur by October 1 of each year, and that's a change from the current, which is June 30th, which I think everyone recognized was problematic this year and was extended because we're waiting on information from the state. It requires the board to adopt a motion rating the performance as unsatisfactory, developing / needs improvement, effective or highly effective. It creates a situation where the board will discuss the evaluation instrument with the superintendent, but the board retains the discretion to establish the criteria and the evaluation instrument. Talks about each meeting individually. Before that vote occurs, it also establishes a mid-year informal evaluation where board members meet individually with the superintendent. That's the primary gist of that paragraph.
I'd like to comment on this section. One of the concerns that had been raised is that some people's voices aren't heard in the evaluation process. I think even though we may be changing the evaluation instrument, that if there are some disagreements or different ways of seeing things, that they will sit down with the superintendent and discuss these issues, so that any things that need to be clarified will be clarified with the superintendent rather than social media or on the board, so that the superintendent knows what's there, and if there's some inaccurate information that perhaps can get cleared up, so it doesn't go through the kind of machinations we've had before. Hopefully this will help let these all members be heard, so that they know that the superintendent, who is being the one evaluated, the superintendent will hear what those evaluation comments are, because that's who's supposed to be hearing it, the superintendent, and then we will hear from each other where we are to make up a comment, because it's the superintendent that needs to hear the evaluation.
Mr. Robinson.
What is the connection between his evaluation and his pay in this contract? Is there a nexus between how his evaluation ends up and how much of a raise he gets?
No.
There's no connection. So if he gets unsatisfactory or highly effective, what would be the range of salaries that he would get in between unsatisfactory or highly effective?
The contract doesn't set up any direct nexus based on evaluation. I suppose if there were poor enough evaluations, then you could be potentially looking at a for-cause termination situation, but there's no direct.
So if a majority of the board, 3 of the board members rated him unsatisfactory, like you said, could they fire him for cause, like you just said, if the majority of the board?
The provisions for termination require a supermajority, 4 out of 5 board members.
So in the scenario you just gave of 4 years of unsatisfactory evaluations, not only would it not affect his raise, it wouldn't rise to the level where you could have cause where you could fire him.
It could. You would just need a supermajority of the board to make that.
But I was asking if a majority of the board had done that.
That's correct.
That is correct. And I think I proved my point.
Mrs. Ziegler.
Just hinging off of Mrs. Brown's point, I just want to make sure it's really clear, because the evaluation is something I really have stressed a lot on. Just again, it's for the public listening, and just to go a little bit through history and looking forward, because how relevant is this board collaboratively created a current contract that the superintendent's currently under. I understand we're revising that. I get that. That's where we're at today. The evaluation tool that we used, we created and drafted all together, all 6 of us. But it was the first time we utilized it, and there were a lot of different things that we'd done than what had happened in the past, which made it a little bit rockier, and there were some numerical elements that we utilized, and so I had brought forward in the retreat that I want to make sure that we smooth out the evaluation process just in general before I knew we were doing a contract. But when I go down to the point of making sure members' voices are heard, in the superintendent's current contract, it does require you meet with them in advance. It's more that I'm trying to stress that because there has been continued criticism, and I'll take it because that's part of this job and I don't mind it, but from other board members, as far as that they felt, and I'll just use me, that they felt I evaluated the superintendent unfairly. Well, that's their opinion, but I think it's important that we each have our equal weight heard. And it's not so much, and yes, absolutely, I mean, you're not a very good leader if you're working with a member of staff, which would be our superintendent, if you're not sharing those concerns with them. That's why I'm very encouraged to see a mid-year, unofficial evaluation. I think that's only fair to the superintendent. But I also think it's really important for this body, especially as we try to work together, that you read and understand and reflect on some of the comments that the board member is making about their evaluation and why they made it. So I think that's just a really important part that I don't want to get lost moving forward. If we want these evaluation tools to mean something, and our board collegial relationship to mean something, that's a part that I just do not want to get lost.
And I agree, and I think that the same could be true for the other ones. I mean, so we can't say one is right and one is wrong.
I don't criticize my fellow board members for their evaluation. So I just want to.
But I will say this: we will put together a new evaluation together as we talked about earlier today.
Perfect.
And we will make sure that that is something that everybody agrees on.
Very good.
As most superintendent contracts that I reviewed, they don't have the bonuses in them. They don't tie the evaluation and the money and the renewal of the contracts. A lot of these things are not tied together for superintendents. They never were for Lori White. And, you know, it was 3% a year, which is more than this is. So I would say that looking forward, you know, we can certainly do some tweaking and do some things to make sure that we all are on board with the evaluation tool that we will use.
And we had some discussion, as our attorney pointed out. This is a contract between the board and the superintendent. It has to be approved by both sides. And when we were discussing whether or not to continue with that $15,000 bonus, I mean, I talked about having an amendment that we would put that back in there. And the well, I don't want to get to the compensation that comes up next, but the superintendent had some input on why he felt that it was best to discontinue that operation, that bonus in the contract. Would you want to share that with us and why you felt that you didn't want the bonus, even though we were looking at putting it back in?
Well, the contract as written provides, number one, some security and some certainty in regards to the bonus structure. That's really the work of the classroom teacher, and I just think it's problematic to compensate a CEO on a bonus structure. And so that's why I've asked that the bonus be removed and other offers of bonus structures not be included. I've respectfully declined.
We had a lot of confusion last year out in the public about the bonus, and that was very true. These things, you know, are easily confused. Mr. Hardy.
Paragraph 4 is entitled Compensation, and I would point out to the board that based on the conversation at the workshop, there are a couple of changes to the contract that I've now presented you and which are available in the back. The first is at the conclusion of paragraph 4.1. I have included the sentence, in the event of an across-the-board salary decrease for school board employees, Bowdoin's base salary will decrease by the same percentage. And in 4.3, just put in the phrase at board expense to clarify the payment of the health insurance. So I just wanted to point those two things out to the board. Overall, this paragraph, or these paragraphs of number 4, set forth the base salary over the 4 full years of the contract, references the potential for the performance bonus for this school year, which is in the current contract based on the goals that have been established, does not have further bonuses, as just has been discussed. It includes an annuity in 4.6 of $12,500 a year, and discusses various expenses which and benefits which are similar to what are in the current contract.
Mrs. Brown.
I want to bring some clarity to this conversation on the salary. When we were interviewing for superintendents back in 2016, the board agreed on a salary range from $185,000 to $185,000 to $225,000. We looked at what superintendents around the state were getting, and we came up with that range. I was chair at the time, and as is protocol, it was the chair who went in and talked with the attorney. We had a broad outline of what we wanted in our contract, but the dollar amount, I went in the back room and I put in the dollar amount, and there was a few other changes I made. Some of you may remember that was a 4-1 vote, and this discussion took place directly after that meeting that I had originally voted against the superintendent. And I have to embarrassingly admit that I was being quite snippy, snarky, whatever, when I went back there with our attorney, and I said, give him the lowest, give him 185, and that's where we're going to go with it. And I think I cut down the sick days too, and I think we took out the annuity. So if we were to give him the raises that are in here, I mean, they're less than 2.5%. The 5,000. If we were to give him those raises every year in 2023, he would be at 222,000, which is still less than what we had agreed to back in 2016, the range that we were looking at having our superintendent at. And this isn't an automatic increase. If you look at the contract, I mean, a lot of people said they didn't have time to look at the contract. I looked at the contract. I read the words. And if you look at page 2 of 12, 4.1, base salary, the second sentence says, the salary base amount shall be subject to annual review by the board at the administrator's salaries are at the time the administrator's salaries are reviewed, but shall be no less than the salary base amount for the immediate previous fiscal year. So that means that $5,000 raise is not automatic. We have to look at that raise when the other administrators are getting their raise. That's what the language says. Page 2. I just read you. That's what's in this. But that's what's in the contract.
But I want to make sure we're all clear about this. The next sentence says, during the first 4 years of the agreement, the base salary shall be as follows, and creates the base salary for each of those years.
But it also says they'll be reviewed, and they won't be less than the previous year.
It does say that, but then it goes on to set the base salary. So certainly there can be a review, and the board could choose to do more. Depending on the circumstances. But I do believe that it is the intent of the agreement to set the base salary at the level specified on the top of page 3 for each of the years. I want to make sure we're all clear about that.
Mr. Robinson.
You can just say Mr. and I think we know who you're talking to. Yeah, Mr. Hardy, but I just think that two things. We had a lot of discussion about steps for our staff and how we wanted to get them off the step schedule and how we didn't want them to have automatic raises. And we had a lot of consternation last year of getting staff off a step, and now we're going to essentially put the CEO on a step system, which I've never seen where a CEO got an automatic every single year. And then 2, the health insurance benefit, again, going back to, teacher with the family, they're going to have to, come out of pocket. The high PPO is $2,300 a month. And we're talking about recruitment and retention of teachers and leading by example. The CEO can afford to pay for the health insurance. The teachers are the ones who can't. The teachers' aides are the ones who can't. But yet they got to come out of pocket to pay for it. So it's hard to go and look them in the eye and justify what it is that I did. I need to make sure that whenever I make a vote, I got to be able to explain myself. I got to go to stand up to Ms. Hembree or Elizabeth and defend myself. And I got to be able to feel good about and justify why I did that. I got to be able to sleep at night. And I have a hard time justifying teachers having to pay for this and somebody who makes $200,000 not. I mean, I can't in good conscience look somebody in the face and defend that decision.
Moving on.
Paragraph 5 talks about leaves, and this is the same as the language in the current contract. Paragraph 6, corrected from this morning, the typo in additional in the heading, and this is language from the Orange County contract. Paragraph 7 sets out board superintendent relations. That is from the Orange County contract. I did remove, pursuant to the discussion, 7.5 regarding Sundays, so that's out. Paragraph 8 is the termination provision. That's been discussed, sets up the various types of termination, including without cause, for cause. It sets out if there's termination without cause, the 20 weeks of severance, which is the current contract. It has the supermajority requirement for all of the terminations. Paragraph 8.4 talks about notice, gives the board, or gives the superintendent 30 days notice of such actions, but took out post facto notice that we have in the current contract, but it does permit the suspension with pay without notice.
Mrs. Goodwin.
Mrs. Ziegler.
Thank you. I just didn't want to get past Chapter 8 before we moved along. And I'm trying to get, so many of these sections are tied together in my personal opinion, but I'm trying to be fair to not be redundant, but also to hit on my concerns. I know they were addressed earlier, but the one that gives me the most significant heartburn, and I would argue that that is what has given this community, and while and I want to thank everyone for coming today, there were hundreds of people who were unable to come for scheduling purposes or what have you, but did reach out to all of the board members, and this was the one thing that was consistent across the board about their major concern. And I think a couple things that are really important to note as far as I'm sorry, I should articulate what I mean. The supermajority is my specific issue. You know, I think that there's a component that I think Mr. Robinson used a really good example of, hypothetically speaking, and again, this is objective. Right now, we're trying to draft a contract that makes sense for its good policy. I don't want it to be looked at as this is, you know, a hit at Dr. Bowden or anything like that. It's looking at what is in the best interest, which is what we're tasked to do for this organization and any unforeseen circumstances that may weigh ahead. And that truly, if there were ever a circumstance that there were unsatisfactory across the board, but it would require, and you have 3 unsatisfactories and 2, you did a better job giving the scenario, but that it illustrated that there would be an automatic raise of $5,000 and that there would be an inability to terminate, even if that was justified under cause, without a supermajority. And I think the really important part, as someone said this today, is about trusting voters. We are the voice of voters, each of us individually elected. And so when you tie the hands of a majority only to a supermajority, I think you then therefore cut out voters' voices. And I cannot stand for that. I would like to. And I think there's a lot of provisions in here, but that is the one that gives me the most heartburn. I think that, you know, again, I said this earlier, I think that the automatic pay increases are frustrating to me because I know what we are offering our teachers, and I think leading by example is so important. And so I want to compensate our top administrator, our CEO, who runs the district well, but it has to be tied to success. And it also, I think, should align the organizational structure in which we compensate all of our staff in. I don't think it's fair. And I think the other part of highlighting in comparison to elected, with all due respect, you're an appointed superintendent, and so there's a whole different circumstance. And I think you'd use the example as we win by a majority as elected officials. So that is why is the standard different in this circumstance? Again, there's a number of elements in here that are completely, in my mind, lopsided to the community which we are here tasked to represent. I would like to amend Section 8.1 and 8.3 and remove requiring a simple. So actually, I move to amend Section 8.1 and 8.3 to require a simple majority for cause.
Second. There is a motion on the floor.
Which I can amend it.
So you're amending it?
I am.
So we have to vote on this motion?
That's correct.
You vote on the amendment, and it passes or fails, and then you vote on the original.
Go back to the original.
Then you go back to the original motion,
So, and if you
either
want
as amended or not.
And I can restate if you'd like.
I think we've got it. Okay, we're going to do a voice
Can we discuss
vote of
it?
this. Yes. Mrs. Brown.
In Lori White's contract, we had some language that the board would not act capriciously and before we terminated her contract. and it looked like there might have been some danger of moving forward to that. But if we remove, or we or a future board were to remove the superintendent without cause, that triggers a severance pay package of 20 weeks. Some people call that a golden parachute, but I don't think 20 weeks is a golden parachute. If you remove somebody without cause, as in most contracts that you see, there's some severance pay. The other side to that is if we remove the superintendent without cause, he has to take his severance pay and go. He cannot fight that unless we're breaking the contract. Termination for cause. Termination for cause would be not only if he was not acting to what our expectations were, but I mean there are certain things that are listed. This is cause. I think it wasn't. I'm sorry, I don't remember all. Could you tell me what those causes were again?
Well, I mean, the contract says cause includes without limitation, so there could be additional things, but what is specifically listed is willful neglect of duty, material breach of agreement, violation of the code of ethics applicable to members of the teaching profession, violation of the code of ethics prescribed by Chapter 112, conduct precluded by certain rules in the administrative code, or for just cause as determined by section 1012.33. And that is the so-called 7 deadly sins.
In our discussion this morning, to have a majority vote for that, when the chances of the superintendent fighting that would be very high, because if a superintendent was fired for what somebody called cause that he didn't feel was cause, because it would affect his ability to get a job. So I think that the board, before they go ahead and you might as well say charge him with cause. I mean, just like you can charge him with something or say something about something. We all know about the sexual harassment allegations that were cleared, but they're still hanging around his neck. If we were to try to terminate him for cause that turned out to be something that he didn't feel was justifiable cause, he could turn around and sue the district. We would have those, well, the DOA hearings and all of that. There would be the legal cost involved in that, and if he were to win, that's where you would get your golden parachute, where we would have to pay him damages or the rest of his contract. I mean, so I think that you need to stop and pause. You need to understand the implications of what you do. It's not just that easy to just fire that superintendent. You've got to have a reason to do it, because he has to have something to fall back onto. You just can't accuse a superintendent of some of these things and not expect him to stand up for it if he was not guilty of those things, as we saw in some of this others. So I think that the board needs to stop and think about that, and they need to have an understanding that there could be very high fiscal implications if you take that action. And the same thing with the without cause. Because we were talking about removing that clause altogether. I think by putting it in with the supermajority was a good compromise. But then talking about supermajority for all the rest of them, when I understood the implications of doing that capriciously, I thought, well, yeah, maybe we better stop and think about it. And so I'm going to be opposing that amendment, and because I, too, was looking at why do we need a supermajority for the termination for cause? And then I understood more after talking to our attorney why we need that. And I'm going to oppose this amendment to the motion.
Mrs. Ziegler?
Well, a couple things. I just wanted to, well, I guess I'll close on my amendment, but there's a couple of things that were said, and I think it's important. Again, I wanted to be very clear about something Mrs. Brown just said. The reality is that, as discussed earlier, in the event of for cause, whether at 324150, the superintendent would have due process and could sue the district for any scenario. So that exists still today. I mean, that implication may still exist. And again, I recognize the intent of, I believe you're stating that you want to have a add additional fiduciary protections, but I would argue that at the same time, this ironically hijacks the ability for fiduciary protections of this organization if you require a threshold of a supermajority. The other question, I want to make sure this is clear, because there's a little, the way in which, and that's what I said earlier today, I thought the way in which this kind of went, with the process of this was a little, in my mind, backhanded, is that normally I would think that the board would have come together, kind of talk about parameters, agree upon them, then the chair would be directed to negotiate with the superintendent. They come back, have a final revision, final draft. We would go with that and put it on the agenda, have it public, and vote on it. But there is an important part that I think today that discussed, and I want to make sure I'm clear, and I think the public's clear, as far as what the superintendent is willing to do. And I know something was said today that I only caught quickly, but that he had mentioned, Dr. Bowden, you had mentioned you had been negotiating in good faith. And I just want to clarify, was this negotiated, the two of you together, before this was brought to the board?
I had conversation that included both Mr. Hardy and Ms. Goodwin. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so together, so the contract was drafted by Mrs. Goodwin and then brought to Dr. Bowden and then brought to, or I just want to make sure I'm clear, because there's a couple of reasons this is relevant. Is that accurate?
Did you draft the conversation, or did you bring the Orange County in and had the attorney?
I took the Orange County document and added some of the things from the existing contract and typed that up and then discussed it with Mr. Hardy and with Dr. Bowden.
Did Dr. Bowden see the contract before Mr. Hardy did?
I saw both the Orange County, and then I met with Mr. Hardy on the contract that had my name on it.
So the draft contract that Mrs. Goodwin had created, you hadn't seen until our attorney had seen.
If you consider the Orange County contract.
Well, but our contract, the draft, excuse me, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but just for clarification, the draft that we were initially presented with on Friday, at 10:30, had Orange County provisions in it, but it also had a number of other provisions that you had identified, which includes a supermajority. That's not in Orange County. The pay salary schedule, not sure. Was that in Orange County? Don't believe that was.
It was.
It was? Okay.
A much richer, but a similar.
But the supermajority clause, which, again, is the one I take the biggest issue with, was not in Orange County's clause. So I just want to understand.
No, it was not, because they'd like for Barbara Jenkins to be there until,
But we're talking about for Sarasota County. So
no, but that I'm saying, looking through the lens of Orange County, there was not any no cause. I don't think there's even a no cause in there.
So with that, you had drafted the contract based on the language from Orange County, implemented some additional language before Art Hardy, which I has spoken to counsel and understand that he did some tweaking, not of any substance. He did not draft any substance. It was more various technical changes. Did that draft get to Dr. Bowden before our board attorney saw it?
No.
No?
Simultaneously?
Yeah, at the same time.
Okay, and so I guess where my question is was the supermajority provision a negotiating piece that you would require if we were to hypothetically get rid of it? Would that be something you would be willing to move forward with?
I'm willing to enter into the contract that is in front of you. If you were to choose to amend that contract, that's a hypothetical that I would have to deal with at that point in time, but my gut reaction would be to serve out my existing contract.
So, and the reason this was somewhat inferred today was that the supermajority for cause specifically was something that appeared to be a non-negotiable to you. So I just want to be very clear if that is, and someone actually mentioned this, which I just jotted it down in my notes, was if there were to be an ultimatum set forward. And I want to make sure that if the board drafts a contract and brings it forward to you, we can tweak it, but I kind of want to understand who's driving the train.
I was driving the train, Bridget, and basically it was my idea for supermajority in both areas. And the reason was because of the disposition of the board. And in talking to people, in talking to other factions within the state of Florida, I felt the need to do this and to have this wording there for both.
And when you did your research, because what I was able to find from the 67 counties in the state of Florida, and I know you guys work very closely with FSBA, and they have great professional development, and I've reached out. They also have great insight onto contracts. Have you touched base with them as far as best practices on this?
Yes.
And how many counties currently offer?
I think there's only one, but I believe that there are numerous other county governments that have those.
But from a school district standpoint?
No. Just one.
And do we have any of the names of the county municipals that
I can't remember at this point in time.
Okay.
So,
all right. Well, I'll close on my amendment.
But this was my idea and my idea alone. There was no pressure from the superintendent about it. At first, there was only the supermajority for item number 8.1, and then I thought about it long and hard and thought it made sense for both.
Okay. Thank you for clearing up that question I had.
Mr. Robinson.
Yeah, just going to the termination for cause. So let's think about this logically. So when you exercise the termination for cause, there's two options. Either you're actually terminating them for cause, or you're not terminating them for cause. So if you're not terminating them for cause, but you're trying to use that clause to use the cause, there's a due process. You would be able to go to double hearing, and it wouldn't hold up. And so it doesn't matter whether it's 5-0, 3-2, 4-5. It's immaterial how many people it takes to fire him if you decide to exercise termination for cause without a cause. Okay, so let's take that off, because it doesn't matter whether it's 3-2, 4-5, or 5-0, because even if it's 5-0 and you terminate him for cause and that's done incorrectly, as Ms. Brown said, he would be able to come back, he would be able to get pay. So it's immaterial whether it's 3-2, 4-1, or 5-0. So going to termination for cause. So you're terminating somebody who for cause has violated ethics, got found guilty for a crime of moral turpitude. Why would you not want to say a simple majority? You see, you would be in a situation where you would have a superintendent that you had cause, actually violated the ethics law, actually found guilty of moral turpitude, but you're saying a simple majority couldn't get rid of them. So can you imagine the scenario that one of these things had happened: neglect of duty, material breach of agreement, violation of ethics codes, where a majority of the board says that he did this? They're correct, because what's assuming right now, this scenario, that it's for cause. That would be disastrous for the school district, to have a superintendent who violated one of these items. A majority of the school board agrees that he violated one of these items. If it went into a court hearing, they would all agree with the majority of the school board, but the school board not being able to do something about it. That doesn't make sense. And so in that situation, you would have two people who knew that he violated the law, knew that he violated ethics, but didn't want to do something for the best interest of the district. To me, that's playing politics. So why would you not have a simple majority if it's for cause? Because again, if they try to fire him if it was without cause, there's a backstep, there's due process to ensure that didn't happen. So the only time this can be exercised is if the superintendent actually performs one of these actions, violates ethics, material breach, violates one of the 7 deadly sins. So given all those scenarios, it only seems logical that it would have a supermajority, because having it where a majority of the people would want to fire him with cause, and they had good cause to do it, is not in the best interest of the school district.
Mrs. Zucker.
Pardon me. I am one of those people that wants the with cause in there. I wanted with cause in there. But when I saw that it was a 4-to-1 vote, I said, okay, that will mean it will be equal. I can live with the without cause as long as there's a 4-to-1, so that he can't just be fired on a whim. Because let's understand what's really happening here. There is a push to get another board member on this board so that the superintendent can be fired. And it's my, yes, it is. My seat is the next one that's up. And that's what people are. They have people set up to run against me so that they can have their 3-2, and I can tell you who it is even, that they can have their 3-2 majority to get rid of the superintendent. Now, if you think that's not politics, that is politics at its worst. So why shouldn't I then want a 4-1 to ensure that he is able to be fired for cause, but not just at the whim of some people? That's all I'm trying to do in this. And this is nothing that's not known. I have been offered to be able to retain my seat if I would vote to get him out. So come on. And I will swear on that on a Bible.
Mrs. Brown.
I had that offer too. But I think you, Mr. Robinson, said that that there would be the DOA hearing if we fired him without cause. The language says he waives his right.
No, that's not what I said.
All right. If we fire him without cause, he has to go away. He can't contest it. But if there is a vote by a single majority to fire him for cause, and it's not a full board, I would think he would more likely go, because again, I said it would affect his career where he would go if that happened. And so if you don't have a full board that's because I would think that if there was for cause, you know, if he violated one of those things and there it was, I would think, because I know I would vote against it. I would vote for something like that. Because if you go to a DOA hearing with a 3-2 vote, I think the superintendents can sit there and say, well, look at this. They weren't even in agreement on whether this was right. I think that if he were to go to a DOA hearing and with a 5-0 vote or even a 4-1 vote, he'd have a lot less standing. I think that for our protection, for the fiduciary duty of the district, I would like to put that in because I know there are some people that would like to see him gone, and regardless of the cost, regardless of what it does to the district. And we're sitting at these times, and I think we need this to protect our district from, I'll use that word again, capricious actions.
Mrs. Ziegler.
Yeah. Well, I'll close on my amendment. I think I've said my piece.
Okay. And if there are no more discussion, we'll have a voice vote on the amendment. What's your name? Mrs. Brown.
Oh, yeah, you're thinking, who am I? Brown votes no.
Zucker votes no.
Mr. Robinson?
Yep.
Mrs. Ziegler?
Yes, ma'am.
And I vote no, so the motion fails 3-2.
I should do yes, ma'am.
Continuing right along, Mr. Hart, you're getting paid for your and then some today.
The last paragraph is paragraph 9, entitled General Conditions, and that's what this is. This is a lot of kind of legal boilerplate, much of which is in the current contract. No significant changes here, and that is the summary of the agreement.
The motion on the table is the approval of item number 29, the approval of the superintendent's employment contract as presented and after being revised and given to us today, without amendment, or as amended. Well, as amended by Mr. Hardy, but
yeah, as amended as
approved. We have some more comments before we vote. Mrs. Ziegler.
Well, in closing, I am grateful that we had the opportunity to workshop this today. I regret the way this has transpired. I think it was easily avoidable, quite frankly, that, whether there was a preconceived notion that this would turn out the way it did, whether there's, like, I think everyone talks about a 3-2, I think there's a process that's bigger than any person here, and the respect and integrity of the board and the organization and mission we serve. And I think that process matters. And if we want to continue or have a collegial working relationship, it's really respecting that process. So I wish and I regret, like I said, that this took place the way it did. I think it hurt the trust, it erodes the trust and faith that we have with our community, and our community has been incredibly generous to us and continues to do so because they believe in the mission and the greater good of our students. But I can tell you, and it's not a partisan political divide, it is a gross majority that people are very frustrated that they feel that they are not being listened to, and that we are setting a poor example as we move into contract negotiations with our staff and our teachers, who to me are the most important thing next to parents when it comes to educating our children. And I fear for the future of what is behold us, whether it be contract negotiations, renewing our referendum, and a number of other things. And I think that it's irresponsible, quite frankly, to approve the contract language as is, specifically with the supermajority. It sends a message to this community that we do not trust them. And I think examples were given up here today specifically that reiterate that, saying, referencing upcoming elections. And whether that may be the case or not, it comes down to it comes down to we are elected by the voters, and they kick us out if they don't want us here by a simple majority. And we should not tie the hands of voters in the future. I believe Dr. Bowden can stand on his own merit and doesn't require a super majority. I believe that due process is in place for a reason, and quite frankly, I'm very disappointed. And at the end of the day, I really do believe that if I had said this earlier, and I have questions and major concerns, even for the superintendent to think this is okay, this is an okay contract. And while I know it affords well for you, I think it sends a bad message to the district. And my biggest concern is, where does that take us in future discussions? I was worried about financial circumstances, and I appreciate that we were able to at least add that provision that if there were across the board cuts, that would afford to you as well. So I appreciate you being willing to do that, because I think that's very important. But at the end of the day, I have said this before, and I don't want this to be a trend that continues, but the self-preservation of you supersedes the greater good of this district, and that bothers me. And I think it sends the wrong message to this community. Whether they agree with me on half the issues or not, I think that's a continued message that's being sent from this board based on the actions that we're taking. So I will not be supporting this, and it gives me tremendous heartburn, because every single board meeting we have amazing presentations from the generous people in this community, the philanthropic elements that they bring forward. And then we are going to move to our contract negotiations, where we just had a very brief budget discussion. I know there's a lot of unknowns, but we're very unlikely to be able to afford any significant or raises at all. And yet we are approving this before we even have that conversation about our staff. And that disappoints me, and I think it's the wrong direction for this board, so I will be voting against this motion.
Mr. Robinson.
Yeah, trying to remain competent. My position has been mischaracterized multiple times, so I just want to make sure it's abundantly clear what my position is. I agreed with Ms. Goodwin when she said at the retreat that we should try to make this a unified process, and I tried to make a motion up here, but it was ruled out of order, to simply renew his contract for another year, so it'd be a yearly annual contract, much like the teachers would be. So I was for that. I knew it, but now it's clear that this contract is put out simply to stop the will of the people at the next election. That is politics. You can't get more political than that. We're doing this contract to stop the will of the people at the next election, to stop them from making sure their voices are heard. Oh my God, you should see the things people say about me in my face on Facebook or Twitter. They have names for me, Prince of Darkness, whatever. But, oh my God. But I'm up here. I got to take it. And when it comes time for election, I got to stand in front of people. I got to listen to Elizabeth, corner me. That's part of being an elected official. I got to stand and fall based upon my votes. That's how it is to be up here. And to say, let me see how I can maneuver to moot the will of the people to get my, to get what I'm trying to accomplish. That is politics used in such a negative way. Not to say there's a way to make politics positive, but that is such a negative thing to do. So for that reason alone, I'm going to be voting against it.
Mrs. Brown.
I'd like to clear up some of the confusion and misinformation, that has been surrounding this contract and how we got here. And whether this is politics or that was politics. It's my nature, I'll be frank and tell you exactly how I see things. I believe that there are forces in this community that want to sabotage Dr. Bowden's position as superintendent of our school district. Well, there are others, and I think we saw some here today that made presentations that want us to take action to secure his position. I've heard from both sides. Political discord has infiltrated our school board in the last few years. I've been on this board 12 years now. We have never seen this until the last 4 years, this kind of things. Board disagreements are not discussed at the board. At first, they're played out in social media, before they even come to the board. And, the local Republican Party gets in on the fray also, as they did on this one, as they've done on several others. I don't know how they come. The union has never supported Todd. That's no secret. And I believe there are others that are trying to use that situation to change the political makeup of this board. The union has been sending emails to their members bashing and name-calling any board member that shows support for Todd. And they spent over $100,000 in the last election trying to defeat me and threatened to pull their support for other Democratic candidates to the local Democratic Party. That's politics. So the idea of whether or not we keep or not keep Dr. Bowden, politics is here. That's what it is, and that's what we're trying to put to the side. Let's put that aside and let's get back to the district. We're looking at this new contract as a result of actions that were taken and at the evaluations last year and some of these other things that have been played out in the last election. But there was an amendment that was offered to remove the language without cause. We didn't do that. We said we're going to postpone that for next year. As our chair, it's Jane Goodwin's job to bring this back to the board. She told us at the retreat that she was doing this. It shouldn't have been any surprise. The process is we'll bring it to the board. We workshop it. We went over item by item. You bring it back, and you have a vote on it. As I said before, when we hired Dr. Bowden, we had the framework of a contract, but it was me as the board chair that went in the back room with the superintendent and filled in those blanks. This contract that is before us now keeps that language that we can terminate him without cause. But it requires a supermajority vote for that action. In turn, he would waive his right to object to this action, but receive a compensation equal to 20 weeks' pay. Isn't standard in most contracts in this state. And I believe this is a fair compromise. It's not the golden parachute that some have said that is in his contract. The terms of this contract, as we discussed, extends it for 3 years, so it'll be a 4-year contract. And I gave my reasons for doing that before. We need consistency on this board. Teachers was said to only have a 1-year contract. That's not something we did. That was done by the state. I would like to see that removed. I would like to be able to see us give our teachers a continuing contract, but that's not in my bailiwick right now. The $5,000 annual salary increase starting next year is like a 2.5%. Maybe it would have been easier to say if we just put 2.5%. Well, I guess it's 2.4, 2.3. Maybe 2.5% increase would have been something easier for you. But what it is, this contract lays it out. Absolutely, there it is. There's the amount. But again, by the year 2023, that $222,000 is still within that realm of what we said in 2016. So in 2023, 6 years after he was hired, he's still making within that same realm that we said we'd hire him at. And this contract takes away that $15,000 bonus so that he won't be getting that. He'll getting the raise instead. And he explained why, that he doesn't feel it's fair for him to take the bonus for what is done by our district. It's the teachers that are doing the district. He was getting flack on that. So let the teachers get their merit pay, and because they're the ones who did the work. And I didn't originally support Dr. Bowden. A lot of people knew that. But I think he's done some great things for this district. He negotiated a contract with our union that provided between 3.25% to 4.25% raise for 2 years. And even when the legislature only gave us a 47% base student allocation this year, 47 cents. 47 cents. Yeah, I'm a little nervous. Even though they only gave us a 47-cent per student increase, he still worked out the budget to make sure that he kept his promise to our teachers and to our staff. And when the Teacher of the Year, people said he should be in the classrooms, he should be in the dirt. Not that I say that a classroom is dirt, not at all. When the Teacher of the Year finalists were announced, he had his assistant call each school teacher and meet with those teachers for a year. He wanted an appointment to see them in their class, to see how that school was working and how that teacher was shining. And I've seen how he's respected when he speaks out in the community. The leaders support him, and they supported him when he was out there helping us raise that referendum. It was passed by the highest majority ever. And I think he was the one that was out there more than anyone pushing up that referendum this year. I know he was given so much grief, and he still is getting the grief over starting our own police force. But it is now embraced by our local law enforcement, our principals and parents alike. I think after this, we're going to hear even from our law enforcement about where we are. And I know he's had some critics even tonight about what he did with the LGBT communities. But let me tell you, I was so proud when he got a standing ovation for standing up to those critics and issued procedures that will help protect the LGBTQ students in our schools. I have tried in vain to get Todd and union leaders to put their differences aside and work together for the good of the district. He initially believed the union was behind the unfounded harassment claims against him. The union continues to bring these claims up, even though he was clear to the allegations. They even have disparaging photo of him blown up and posted in their front office, which they still share. Lori White had given them a passkey to enter. This is one of the issues that causes a problem, too. Had given them a passkey to enter the administrative offices. Todd is not Lori White. He says he wants the union to meet with the HR department on regular issues. If something has to rise to the attention of the superintendent, call my office, make an appointment. I will sit down and talk to you. Not only that, but I mean, how can you expect him to sit down with you and have the same type of relationship you had with Lori when you're still sending out these negative emails? I would hope that, if we approve this 4-year contract, they'll be more open to calling a truce to get down to what is really in the best interest of our staff and school district. Doing some of the things like we did this morning on staff retention and about benefits for retirees. These are the kinds of things we need to work. Those nasty emails have to stop, because I really believe that's what's hurting the overall morale of our district. We need to work together on a rewrite of the employees' contract that are due this summer, and we need to start now. Not in May or June. We need to start now on that. And we need to work together to rewrite the evaluation tool that you say is so unfair. We're open to do those things. Dr. Bowden says he wants to sit down and take care of this so that our district can take advantage of those bonuses that are being offered by the state. And we need to work together to come up with a budget that doesn't cut essential programs and continues to move this district forward. We need to work together to speak up about any bills introduced in the legislature that are going to hurt us so that we can have our teachers working with us to fight some of these things that are coming forward. But bottom line is, we really need to work together to rebuild the trust our community has that our school district is moving in the right direction. The kind of language that is being bandied around in social media and emails does not help the district, does not move it forward, and hopefully they'll see, okay, we've got this down, we know what the parameters are the next 4 years. Let's not spend the next election trying to get someone elected that'll fire the superintendent. That shouldn't be the main reason why you elect a school board member. One-issue candidates are never a good thing for the school district, and I hope we can support this and show Dr. Bowden that we are working in the right direction. And again, the union leaders are in the back of the room. You've given me a lot of grief, but I still will hold my hand out to you and say, I will still want to work with you. I want to work for the teachers. And if you don't want to work with us, we will continue to do the kinds of things we did this morning, with you or without you. We are still going to move our district forward to do what's best interest of our students and the best interest of our teachers. Thank you.
Mrs. Ziegler.
I just wanted clarification, Madam Chair, members of the board. Are we requiring a supermajority vote to ratify this contract?
No.
Okay. Just for the record, wanted to be clear.
I was waiting for that. I was surprised that we didn't get it earlier, but thank you for that.
Change it either.
Any other questions or any other discussions? I think it's getting late. I would just say, take a whack at me. I put this together, and I'm okay with that. Because I believe in what we are doing here. I believe in the superintendent. You see, I'm looking through a lens of positive, and I think he's a great superintendent. And the more that we can do to work with the union, the more that we can do to help our teachers and our students is what we are all about here. If this gets this off the table, this recurring concern that our superintendent had about being fired, which I know has been in the back of his mind for some time, then that is a better thing. That is a good thing. And it stabilizes our district, and it stabilizes the board. So I just want to say that I'm glad we have this behind us. It's been a long day. Thank you all for your attention and for your due diligence with all of these things. And if there are no other discussions, please vote. And surprisingly, the motion passes 3-2.
We have one other item, the approval of the board acknowledgement of the completion of the Sarasota County School Board 2018 Florida Safe Schools Assessment. I move that we approve it as presented. And are we going to have a presentation? Is he still here? I'm sorry, it's not my place to ask for that presentation. Are we going to have a presentation? I think we should. Oh, wait, here he comes. Here he comes. I want to hear it.
Okay. Chief Enos.
Right, so this should be it then, eh? Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you for being patient.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Madam Chair, School Board, Superintendent Bowden, I'm going to go very quickly to do this, and we'll go over this as part of the Department of Education under the Florida Safe Assessment Tool, School Assessment Tool. We have to make a presentation as a school security, as a police department to the board, and then move on with recommendations. Hopefully at the end you'll see that. One of the things I would say is that some of the information to get further in depth on this, if I would more than happy to have any type of a session.
Individual meeting?
Yeah, or one-on-one to talk about as we move forward. But ultimately, we'll go ahead. Part of everybody knows, Marjorie Stoneman Public Safety Act, the Senate Bill 7026, signed into law on March 9th. In the section 1006.07, subsection 6, is really all of the different rulings in regard to school safety specialists, SST, school safety teams, as regard to having to do the Florida School Assessment Tool. All of those things are in this Florida state statute that the school districts had to use at the beginning of the year when we did this. It also requires the assessment tool to be available for all of the charter schools, and I'll let you know that all the charter schools did do the assessment tool, and they did submit. The tool serves as a guide for school districts, sets all aspects of health and safety and security, as well as examines how the district has implemented health and safety programs, procedures in the 7 categories. Like I said, I'll go quickly on this. Here are the 7 categories: effective and efficient operations, health and safety planning, discipline policies and student code of conduct, school climate and community outreach, safety programs, curricula, facilities and equipment, and transportation. Some of the components, as in those 7, the tools are these different components: are emergency and crisis preparedness planning, security, crime and violence prevention, physical security, support services roles, security, et cetera, et cetera. I won't bore you with reading all this stuff. Also, as part of that, as they took a look at the different tools, is some of the things that went into are some of the physical security improvements that we began. The perimeter fencing at all the schools, a single point of entry, access control, which are the proximity card readers, intercoms messaging, which goes along with the lockdown, limited lockdown and evacuation, which is a message that alerts anybody who's trying to come to campus that we are in a lockdown situation. The classroom door windows covered, again, coming back to the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, is that the interior window where, unfortunately, the shooter could see is where he shot. So we want to make sure that those windows are covered at all times, as well as signage and school design guidelines. Some of the security improvements: we staff a school resource officer on every campus. Part of that update is that within where we are right now, we have hired all of the school resource officers to the allocated amounts for this year, so we are full. And we are still having negotiations with the municipalities, with the chief, as well as the sheriff for next year. Vetting visitors and limiting visitor access. Again, that comes back to a lot of the security enhancement we put at the entryway of the school, as long as Raptor, which every visitor has to go through, which is a sexual predator, sexual offender, looking to make sure that they're eligible to be around kids. Locking classroom doors at all times, determining where safe corners are located, marking them and making those areas clear. As that we also know, again, if you look through the window in the door, where the safe corner would be. In the commission report, they call them hard corners. We call them safe corners because in that corner you would be safe from anybody that could see through the door. Plain language, we went from codes to lockdown, limited lockdown, and evacuation. So we went from a code red to a code yellow to code white, using plain text. Any and all staff members can initiate a lockdown, which when we redid the critical incident guide, all of our staff members know that any time that they can initiate a lockdown, anyone from the person working in the cafeteria through custodian, through the principal, everybody on the campus can lock down at any time they see anything that would rise to the level of suspicion that should require a lockdown. Numerous and varied emergency drills. We've gone to 1 per month, so that we'll ultimately have one, as well as every time there's a fire drill. We'll also be doing a school safety drill to go that. Also participating in the Fortify FL program, which was the anonymous tips for parents and or students to send through the state, which notifies local law enforcement as well as staff on campus about potential threats. We've also done mental health is also part of the bill. Again, collecting data on mental health first aid training and mental health. I know that that is a big piece of what they're looking at Senate Bill 7026. Again, that we are sending on officers to be trained, to be able to come back to train a trainer. We're working closely with the district with that. Some of the findings and recommendations. We meet or exceed the best practice thresholds in all 7 categories. The results of the survey indicate Sarasota County Schools established health and safety and security programs and procedures in place. Recommendations: continue improving school electronic and physical security infrastructure. which would be the continuation of currently what we're doing at the entranceway of all of the schools. Continue efforts in the youth mental health first aid training. Again, going back, train the trainer to make sure everybody is trained to be able to identify someone who may be a youth in crisis. Pursue funding for continued hardening of schools. Continue with active shooter training and drills with all local law enforcement partners. As we have these different training days, we will make sure that we reach out to them as we've already done for active shooter training in the future. Continue with district-wide school lockdowns. We had the first one on December 14th, which every school locked down simultaneously at 9:45. We have another one that is going to be coming up here in February, and then in the future we're going to have an expectation again that it's once a month, that same as they do fire drills, that they'll be doing school safety lockdowns. We're meeting with the fire chiefs regarding false alarm response and evacuation. We've already met with them. We have another meeting upcoming regard to, again, lessons learned in some of the other active shooters. Continue with the development critical incident guide, which is ongoing. Continue with updating of the ERIP, or Emergency Response Information Portal, and sharing with all first responders. That is a portal that all our local law enforcement and firefighters would be able to pull up on their en route to an incident at school, where they'd actually see photographs, as well as where Knox boxes were, as well as to be able to see different things that were on campus, such as gas, where gas lines are, egresses, all those different things. Continue with the installation of the safety glass, as we spoke of. Installation of the safe corner signs throughout all Sarasota County schools. We're having those made. Those will be installed. We did get some requests from substitutes. Well, what if you're a substitute? How would we know where that safe corner is? Well, this will be able to easily identify, again, as we want it to be swift. We want it to be quick. We want the room to look vacant. We want the facility to be locked and hardened, giving time for law enforcement to respond. In closing, we can continue with the implementation of all the current safety measures to be prepared for an emergency on campus through planning, prevention, and training. The survey reinforces the belief while providing assurance that the district is employing best practices to ensure the health and safety and security of our students, employees, and visitors. And this is only, I would tell you, this is only part of what we've already begun to do and what we've already begun to look at moving forward with the school police department. Everything from social media sentinel to just a lot of things, to mobile apps, to technology, using technology for our basis to make sure that we have trainings, to continue with the trainings, to make sure that we have, without a question, has been one of the things that I said coming in here, and I greatly appreciate the opportunity to be chief and opportunity to be able to present this, but is without any question my goal is to have a model agency sooner than later in reference to school policing in the state of Florida and the country.
Were you here earlier today when Kurt Lavarello was here talking about good things?
Yes, ma'am.
I didn't know there's so many people in the audience, but yeah, it's really great to see him. But we really appreciate what you're doing. You've answered Sheriff Knight's letter about next year's staffing or not.
Yes, ma'am.
Where do we stand with that?
We have sent a response back with them, but until March 1st is the deadline that we're still talking with the Sheriff Knight as well as the other chiefs.
Do we think that we are going to staff our schools, our high schools and middle schools?
We're waiting to hear from the partners. We've made every agency an identical offer. Basically what we said is if you want to keep those details, we'll reimburse you at a consistent rate. If not, we're prepared to assume that responsibility.
Mrs. Brown.
You explained this morning that what we'll do is we will contact the local law enforcement and the sheriff and say, if you want your people on our campus, and for some reasons they might, we will reimburse you at $65,000, which is about the cost, total cost for our officers, which is considerably less, well, not some consider, it's less than what the full cost of what the other law enforcement was charging us or would have charged us. So basically, we're not going to pay, because a lot of people were saying that our law enforcement officers were costing us more than what the sheriff and what the police were offering. So you're saying that the $65,000 is less than what they were going to be paying, what they were going to be charging us.
Correct. It is less than the full cost of the officer, and it's also less than our 80% share under our current agreement.
Can I ask another question?
Yes.
I'm glad that we meet or exceed all of these things. Quick question, you nod or not, I think I know the answer, but the whole community still seems unclear of this answer. We all agree there was a rough start. We've moved forward. We're working on it. Are we still having problems working with our sheriffs and our police chiefs?
Absolutely not. We have a great relationship. I meet with them all the time. I look to the sheriff for a lot of different support as regards to programs, some implementation, and the same with the chiefs.
And I know they had hesitations about it before. Now, are they saying, yeah, we think you're doing a good job?
I hope so. I hope they were saying that, but I can tell you from meeting with them, and I have a very great relationship with them for all of them, Sheriff Knight as well as all the other chiefs. I talk to them regularly. I speak to them regularly. They are very, very supportive that they want this agency to not only to succeed, but they want us to be the best ever, because ultimately they also have children that are in the schools, and they know that safety issue is vitally important. So they want us to succeed. And that's one of the support that I get, is that anything that I've been told, if I haven't been told once, I've been told 20 times, if there's anything that we need, just to ask them that they would assist us.
Oh, of course, you're such a nice guy. Of course they'd want to help us. The other thing is that once a month lockdown drill that we do, is that something that's required, or is that something that we want to do? And how long does that take? And is it that full lockdown where the kids don't know and they might be in the corner, you know, texting their mom, I'm in a lockdown, I think there's a shooter down the hall?
No, we make sure that there's an announcement on that. We put it out for the staff. We let everybody know prior. The children also have had enough of them where the students, where they know when it's coming and when it, you know, they know what to do. So part of the answer is that we make sure that as we're going with the training and going with the safe corners and the designation of the safe corners, being able to, you know, as an example, there's limited space in a classroom for a teacher. So in a lot of the places that would have normally been a safe corner, as we implemented this, they had to make sure that there wasn't books there or there wasn't teaching aids. So part of that issue was to get that out of the way, to be able to designate it, to be able to do that. Myself and Dr. Bowden, we did a informative video for the staff just on how to designate your safe corner, to make sure nothing was there, how to move your students, what the staff's responsibility are, keeping your windows, the windows blacked out, making sure that you were able to go out, sweep people in, all encompassing to show them exactly what it would look like, and it only takes a matter of seconds.
So it's there without that overriding fear. Correct. That some of those other lockdown practices I've heard about in other districts.
Yes, and there was the one that happened that nobody knew, that had a horrific outcome, you know, in that it scared the kids with the response of the officers from that agency. But also, it says in the statute that as you do other training,
that didn't happen in our schools.
No,
that wasn't our schools that happened.
No, and in regards to that, it says in there, if you have any other type of safety drills, that you're all supposed to have a lockdown drill. So we have a fire drill every month. We'll have a safety drill, and it's up to the schools and when they implement it, and they're all supposed to do it at different times during the day. So as we get better and better at this, it should just automatically be just like a fire drill. Every kid knows in a fire drill what to do, how to do it, where to go. It'll be the same, ultimately the same thing.
I think we had nuclear attacks when we were kids, didn't we? We had. Yeah. Didn't we have nuclear or something? We had some kind of atomic bomb or something. I don't know. We had to hide under our desk. You know, that was back in the Civil War. Okay.
We had a vote.
Yes. If there's no more discussion, please vote.
Aye.
No, we should have the voter thing come up, right? Yeah. And
there we go.
All I have to do is find my...
And then cancel.
And again, if I could do a workshop to dig down into this, so that everybody should know exactly where we're going with safety and security, so there should be any questions, so that you'll see as a district that with the support of the superintendent and Mr. Maltzby and the rest of the executive directors and everyone, the assistant superintendent, associate superintendents, we've done a tremendous job moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. That motion passes 5-0. Any other discussion?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Please tell me there's no more discussion. Announcements. Our next regular board meeting is going to be on Tuesday, March 5th, 2019 at 6:30 in the evening in the Northport City Hall. And we will have a budget workshop before that meeting in Northport at 4 o'clock. We're adjourned.
When are you going to do it?
When are you going in?
March 1st, 6:30. Is that your birthday? Okay.
I am.